Hello everyone, it's Teeth Whitener, or Teeth Coon, signing in to tell all of you guys happy Tuesday, and I hope you all are having a great day. Today we're doing our mostly weekly podcast where we discuss something of interest to us, and depending upon what it is, discuss its merits or sometimes discuss its demerits, and then ultimately determine whether or not this is something worth getting invested in, or sometimes just to help explain it to the audience. So before we go into that, let's just do our shout outs. Shout out to Arun, Nina, Venero, Out of Scrubs, Oddling, Autumn's here. But I think that's it for now. But we'll just wait for some of the rest of you to filter in. In the meantime, I'm just going to be setting the stage for what we're talking about. So let me begin with this brief opening monologue. So, on May 16th, 1999, Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace was released, beginning the prequel trilogy of the Star Wars franchise. Many people have lots of strong emotions on the prequels, but for a very long time, they were generally regarded as being not very good due to their overuse of CGI, boring use of camera angles, poor acting in spite of having good actors, bland dialogue, etc. And due to these reasons and more meta reasons, namely that they're inevitably going to be compared to the original trilogy, and they were back then, they became something of an embarrassing talking point for Star Wars fans. And I wouldn't say they kind of faded from existence because people are constantly aware of them, but they were not something that people talked about fondly oftentimes. So it was something that was kind of an embarrassing talking point for Star Wars fans until the modern internet era came and the series began to be memed. So what is a meme? I'm not going to go into that, but basically people took quotes from the Star Wars prequels and started putting them into memes because the Star Wars prequels have kind of clunky, awkward dialogue, and it was fun to make fun of. So therefore, it became prime meme fodder. On December 27th, 2016, the subreddit r prequel memes launched as a forum to post memes based on images, text, and meta discussion about the Star Wars prequels. Initially just episodes 1, 2, and 3, but they expanded it to include any form of media that took place before the original trilogy. This includes Rogue One, Clone Wars, Jedi, Star Wars, the Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, the video game, so on and so forth. In the early days of prequel memeing, they generally focused on making fun of the prequels in general, and like juxtapositioning bizarre plot contrivances with a pre-existing meme format to kind of illustrate how it's kind of weird, or just highlight a textual oddity about it. But recently, in the past few years, and really only a couple months after it started, people started to get kind of soft on the prequels and start liking them a bit more, possibly because of prequel memeing itself. Then the sequels came out, and the first such sequel came out before prequel memes, but The Last Jedi really started this whole internet war, and they hate The Last Jedi. We talked about the sequels, and generally they're not very good. But after that, it really made people solidify their stances on the prequels and made them actually like them more. So this brings us to the modern era today. Prequel memers feel a strong sense of attachment to this series, and here we're going to be asking the question: should they feel that a sense of attachment. So we're going to be talking a little bit about what we like about the series, what we don't like about it, and then I guess at the end we're going to talk about whether or not we should really be whether or not it's worth your time to get invested in it, or if you should just, if you haven't already seen the prequels, just skip them and move on to the original trilogy and pretend that they didn't happen. So with that, we're going to begin our phone call.
Hello.
Hello. How are you? Can you hear me?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Does my audio sound okay? Everyone, by the way, before we get really in depth in this, because I don't want to like get halfway through and realize that I'm inaudible.
It sounds good, at least for me.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to assume that unless everybody else tells me in chat that it sounds bad, I'm just going to assume that it sounds good for everybody. So with that, Gil, what are your thoughts on the prequels in general?
They hold a very special place. They hold a very special place in my heart.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was a kid when I watched them. They have a sense of nostalgia, but they are objectively not good films. That is a summary of my feelings on the prequels.
I feel okay. So we're close to the same age. You're like what, 25? I'm 27, going on 28. So we're pretty much the same age, more or less. So we grew up with these movies, and I think it's fair to say that, you know, they were a pretty big part of our childhood. I feel the same way. They aren't good movies. They're a part of our childhood, so there's a certain fondness I have for them. But retrospect hasn't really done them much favor. Some people feel more strongly about them than they did when they were younger because they felt like bullied into not liking them. I liked them when I was a kid, and then I've rewatched them once, at most once. I haven't seen them more than once. And I realized that for the most part, they're not very good. So, they're not the worst thing ever, but they're pretty bad as a follow-up to something so great.
Yeah, it was, in summary for me, it was like, I liked the story they were trying to tell, but every single way they tried to tell it was bad. Especially dialogue. And there were some good moments of dialogue, but there are some bad dialogue in these movies.
Yes, some really bad dialogue in the movies. I think my phone... Yeah, I turned my sound off. Like, there's some atrocious dialogue. And we'll talk more about this later, I'm sure. But a lot of that, I think, is due to the fact that there really was nobody else writing except for George. And I think he's good as, like, a concept guy and, you know, to give you an idea of where you're going. But I think he really just needs to be, like, kind of the showrunner of the series and really nothing else. Because when it gets down to the nitty-gritty stuff, it gets really clunky. But we'll probably talk about that later. So anything else that you want to say in introduction for this?
I think between me and you, I think that's pretty much covered all I have on an introductive standpoint. I'm ready to get into it.
Okay. So I'm going to start with a really broad introduction to what the prequels are, and then we can talk about the plots of each of them. I don't want to get too nitty-gritty on it because I feel like when we actually start taking them apart, a lot of that stuff's going to come out pretty naturally. So unless there's something you really want to focus in on while we're discussing it, I was thinking about just kind of going right through them as quickly as possible. So
yeah, go for it.
Yeah. And mind you, with The Phantom Menace, I've re-experienced the plot through text, and it will probably be difficult to get through. So it's I think the Clone Attack of the Clones is worse as a movie, but the Phantom Menace's plot is impenetrable. It doesn't make any sense.
It's like a CIS blockade, you could say.
Yes, yeah, that serves no function because it leaves by the anyway. So basically, the prequels are basically a summary of what leads up to the formation of a galactic empire. Okay, and it's not very well explained who exactly Palpatine is before he becomes, trying to manipulate everybody. We don't really know what his motivation is, aside from the fact that he's really, really evil. And I don't guess he really needs to be anything besides that, except for the fact that this prequel series is supposedly supposed to flesh out some stuff. And Palpatine really is at his best when he's just being an evil jerk. Tony, get out of here. So the story opens up, and Palpatine's trying to basically swindle his way into being the Chancellor of the Galactic Republic, and Anakin is discovered, and then it's found out that the Sith are still around, even though they're supposedly gone for a millennium. In the next movie, they find out that Palpatine's at it again. He's trying to force a situation where he has emergency powers, and they basically discover clones, which they use to push back the Trade Federation, who for some reason is fighting. I don't even know. Fighting against itself, because the clones are Palpatine's pawns, and so is the Trade Federation, so he's fighting against himself to amass more power. Seems like he's already kind of got all the power he needs. I digress. And the next movie is basically just the creation of Darth Vader and Palpatine becoming the Emperor that you see in Episode 6. And that's basically a really, really, really rough sketch, so we can probably flesh it out a little bit more. But the whole point of the prequels are to basically give some context for what happens in the Star Wars original trilogy.
Right. It's like, how did Darth Vader become Darth Vader?
Yes. So, something I want to kind of get out there before we really start diving into this. If you feel like the prequels were good because of something that you read or watched that was not one of the movies afterwards, that's not what we're talking about here. Because
that's part of the issue.
Yes, it's part of the issue. It's something that we discussed with the sequels. The extra stuff should not be what saves a movie. If the movie itself can't stand on its own two legs, anything else that's thrown in there to make sense of something that's nonsensical is a crutch. And I think that the prequels have a lot of crutches. I understand that, like, the Clone Wars is like a pretty good TV show, and some of the novelizations are good, and the comic books are good, but that's not what we're here to discuss, because that stuff should be gravy. It should be stuff that adds depth to an already decent existing flavor. It shouldn't be something that it should not be the main course. Because
if anything, it should make you upset that they didn't get it right in the movies.
Yeah,
that
like,
it could have been so much cooler.
Like, that stuff, like, think about how much better the stuff that comes after could be if it didn't have to fix stuff that the movies did wrong. So, and that's my take on it. If anybody else feels differently, feel free to, but you're wrong.
Exactly.
Okay, so we ready to dive into the plot?
Oh, there's so much to dive into.
Let's start with the first movie, I guess.
It's George's quote, or if I always remember this being a quote that he had said, but there was some people that said if Episode 1 would have been what he started with, Star Wars would have never taken off.
Probably true.
And I'm like, that is factual, because Episode 1 is rough.
It's It's like I think I saw some. I was watching video reviews of the prequels to prepare for this. Specifically, Plinkett reviews. I don't know if any of you know what Red Letter Media is, but they did a series in 2009 on the prequels. The first of which was a 70-minute long review of the Phantom Menace, and at the end of it, he says, "Imagine if he had been given total creative freedom with Star Wars. Imagine how much worse it would have been. It would have been probably something like The Phantom Menace." People only like The Phantom Menace because it was a movie that came out in the Star Wars universe. I don't think that it would have taken, like you said, it wouldn't have taken off, I don't think.
No. Give me Darth Jar Jar.
I would have loved that, but they weren't bold enough.
But, so that kind of highlights, the movie starts out just fine. We get two interesting Jedi characters. They have a mission, which seems cool. You have action right off the bat. I'm like, oh, there's these droids. They have really cool stuff. I'm like, it's good. And then they land on Naboo, and then we start going down.
Oh yes, it takes so quickly.
Yep. Like, even had good witty one-liners like, "Well, Master, you were right. Negotiations were short." Like, you have Liam Neeson in it, so like, good start.
You basically see the systematic destruction of everything that made the. I mean, granted, I don't think the opening sequence was like a masterpiece or anything, but it wasn't terrible based on what I can remember and what I've rewatched. But it gets bad after that and nonsensical, and any structure that the plot has built up to by that point is just all of the characters are disastrous messes that don't make any sense and have no motivation. So,
yeah.
But
it's
so there's that sequence, and then they immediately meet Jar Jar. Okay, hold on just a second. I gotta get Tony.
Dang nabbit, Tony.
So basically, as soon as they land on that ship, they meet Jar Jar, and there it is.
There it is.
There it is. That's the plot, and everything stops making any semblance of sense. So basically, the Jedi are sent to negotiate with the Trade Federation about. Now, why Jedi are being sent to negotiate this cease of this trade blockade on Naboo instead of actual negotiators, I don't know, because from what we know about Jedi leading up to this, because all we know about Jedi is the original trilogy, unless you've read the books, and the movie should not assume that you've read the books or seen any TV shows. So so they basically go in, and instead of having people who know what they're talking about, just having Jedis as enforcers or peacekeepers, they have them being the ones who are supposed to be the negotiators. And then they somehow get embroiled in a fight, and they get sent down to Naboo, and they meet up with Jar Jar, and I'll see if you can make more sense of it from this point.
You hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Discord tried to tell me that I didn't have a mic connected. I'm like, excuse you.
Oh.
So, for me, taking it from standpoint, from a writing perspective, that's probably better. Jar Jar is supposed to be a comic relief character.
Right.
It's supposed to be a comic relief character that progresses the story in a way of, we're down the planet now, what's happening? You're on the troop landers, you are around a bunch of enemies. How do you get out of this? How do you progress the plot to get to the important characters? Because your goal is to warn the people of Naboo that war is coming.
Right.
Jar Jar is meant to be a hee hee ha ha character that helps push that, but he's so insufferable because he stays around for so long. He gets them down to see the Gungan tribes, which will set up for later. It's like, look, there's another race that's intelligent, has technology, has stake in this planet. Okay, the Gungan people aren't that bad, but they're just, as a people, they're built to be like, haha, look at the weird, silly aliens. But Jar Jar takes it to a whole nother level. Like, it's okay to have a comic relief character, but he needs to be funny. He needs to be funny to people other than like a 3-year-old that's gonna laugh at anything. And he wasn't funny. Like, nothing he does is funny, and it hurts my soul to watch. Every time I rewatch any of the movies that have Jar Jar in it, it's just, I really don't like using this word, but it's cringy. It's just, it makes you uncomfortable as the viewer. It doesn't make me laugh. It makes me uncomfortable.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, that's what immediately sets off on the wrong foot for me. It's like, if we met the Gungans, they were less like dumb to be silly and funny, and Jar Jar isn't an idiot, then, or even if he is like an idiot, he still like is trying to get some jokes in. But he gets there, he gives them the ship to get back to the people of Naboo. They're gone. We don't talk to them again until we need their alliance later in the movie. Jar Jar is gone. He ends there. He's never seen again after episode 1.
That's true. Well, he's seen like a couple of times.
No, I want him to never be seen again.
I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying.
Sorry, what were you gonna say?
I wasn't gonna say anything.
But for me, that's where it goes off the rails. I didn't like him because he wasn't funny. He was meant to be funny. He missed like all the marks. The Gungans give them a ship. That's fine. The Gungans are kind of like, I don't like how we either in writing we either make alien races either hyper intelligent or hyper stupid. I don't. They would have people that are intelligent, people that are dumb. They would have different personalities. I'm like, we could have done like 15 extra minutes here to been like, the Gungans don't all have to be weird. But there's always a bigger fish. It's still hilarious. Great meme. That one is probably like meme glasses are on. That makes me like it more than I should.
Same here.
But honestly though, like, Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan's interactions aren't that bad in this movie. They're not the problem spot.
The interactions aren't, and I'll talk a bit more later about what the problem with them is. But their interactions are not it. So they basically now. I don't know why they chose to go with Jar Jar in the first place. It's a really confusing plot point because they're supposed to be going to, I guess. I mean, I don't really even know I can't remember what the purpose of them going to Naboo was in the first place. Oh, to warn them about something going on with the Trade Federation? Is it something that they couldn't have already parsed together in whatever its name is, Theed, the capital city? I mean, they probably already know they're being invaded by this point. And as an aside, why did the droids park their ships on the opposite side of the planet? And the way we know it's the opposite side of the planet is because when they do go to Ota Gunga or whatever it's called, they say you have to go through the planet's core, which means to go through the planet's core, you would have to be on the opposite side of the planet to get to the city where the Naboo proper are. So the droids parked their car at the opposite side of the parking lot. The other parking lot across the street.
Yeah, honestly. Do you know what makes it even worse? Like, this whole, like, what you're bringing up is a good point. This whole situation is, They have been blockading a planet with a large military force.
Mm-hmm.
So Naboo should be expecting an invasion at some point.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, they should be prepared for that. I can understand, like, maybe they're naive and they think, oh, they're just kind of flexing. They won't do it. They're just kind of puffing their chest, what have you. But you should still prep for it, right? But even whenever they get to Naboo and they tell them, at first they don't believe them. And then for the Trade Federation, they're like, hoo-hoo, we're being so sneaky with all of our battleships in orbit. We're landing really far away, so they'll never know what's coming. It's the worst kept secret. Everybody knows. Why are you like this?
And they can see, and the thing is, they won't know what's coming. Maybe that's it. But then they'll see you coming from the distance. Why didn't they just park their ships in feed? Like, I mean, or right outside the city walls. This is like something that's established in the movie, is that any army that they have is a volunteer army. They don't have any kind of way to protect themselves from outside invaders. So there's no way for these people to defend themselves. And at least in The Phantom Menace, they don't show any individual Naboo people other than like a few people who work in the spaceport and bureaucrats and politicians. They don't show any people, any Naboo people. Oh yeah, and the Gungans, I guess, but they're separate and they don't talk to the Naboo because I guess they think that they're like an inferior species or something. I don't know.
They're big doo-doo heads.
Big doo-doo heads. I think that might actually be what they say in the movie.
I wouldn't be surprised.
But yeah, I mean, there's just so many questions that I have about this that don't make any sense, and I'll be talking about them later. So they go there, and they basically, I guess they have to get Padme out. I don't know if that's what they're trying to do, but I don't know why they thought that her life was in danger, because the Jedi don't know that her life is in danger. All they know is that the Trade Federation is there, and they're trying to establish a trade blockade. That's all they know. Like, I think they were sent to negotiate an end to it. They were attacked, and then they went down to the planet. They didn't speak to these people at any point, so they don't know what's going on.
Right. Well, then it's like one of her advisors or something is like, oh, they're going to make you sign a treaty to make this all legal. And I'm like, how does that work? In what world?
A legal invasion? That doesn't make any sense.
Is the treaty called I Surrender?
Yeah.
Does that make it legal?
So, like, I think at some point it's revealed that, or I should say, Palpatine basically orchestrated this to get her to vote no confidence in the Chancellor that was existing at the time, Chancellor Valorum. But this is something else that will come up later, so I'm not going to talk about it right now. But that whole thing is just like, it's a really big question mark. Okay, well, what if she signs the treaty? Like, there's nothing for Palpatine to do then. Okay, well, what if during the attempted escape she dies? She can't vote no confidence in the Chancellor, so Palpatine doesn't make any moves in the Senate. So there's way too many question marks here for Palpatine to be putting all of his chips on the table on her deciding to vote with no confidence. Oh, well, and this is what some people will say, because I don't think it's just me creating a straw man. It was the Force that told him to do this. Okay? So the Force is helping him to make decisions? He's a bad person. I thought it was supposed to help you make the right decisions. And that any bad things you did with it was just you manipulating a power that you had, not it telling you to do something. There are so many questions that come up from this. But eventually they escape somehow. And they wind up on Tatooine.
Yeah, that... yeah, they get in there, the blockade runner, and then we get our first little Easter egg, because guess who's there? It's R2-D2. which is
Yes.
fine. I'm not like that upset about it, but it's so R2 was a Naboo astrotech droid that helps um, repair the ship. That's fine. I get that they want to leave and they go to Coruscant to seek help, but like Coruscant already knows. Like the whole point of them is getting off the planet with her so that she can go get help, and they already know, and they haven't sent help. So
Yeah.
why are they going to now? And then that brings an even bigger issue of like what you said. Like, why did they send Jedi in the first place? Maybe this is my American like brain thinking, but if someone's blockading somewhere, why not just send another army there to kind of, gunboat politics to push them away?
Oh, I guess because they can't have an army or something. But there's like 1,000 or millions of planets that they could request an army from. One of them says no. If 90% of them say no, you can still get a large enough army to fight against a couple. I mean, and I'll talk about this later. Like a trade federation. This is like the equivalent of like the FTC in America establishing a smaller army underneath the United States Army. This shouldn't be that big of a deal.
I fight for the Dow Jones.
I fight for the NASDAQ. It's just ridiculous. I don't even know how they managed to do that. Again, they got something off on Geonosis. Whatever. It's beyond the Outer Rim, so it's beyond the Republic's jurisdiction, I guess.
If it's not in my databanks, it doesn't exist, Master Kenobi.
If it's on the archives, it doesn't exist. Exists. Anyway. So they go to Tatooine. And their hyperdrive happens to get damaged in the escape. Which is terribly convenient because it just so happens that this planet beyond the reach of the Galactic Republic happens to have a small boy who is powerful enough in the Force to make people consider him being a Jedi, even though he's too old. It's just very fortuitous for them to have happened upon this planet. So they go there and they come across Watto, and they try to basically scam him out of his slaves because for some reason, Anakin's vibing with Qui-Gon, and okay, I'll do it if you win the pod race. I mean, I guess. I don't know what exactly that has anything to do with anything, but he wins, and they get the hyperdrive, and they leave, and they go back to Coruscant. And then they tell them, hey, the Trade Federation's invading Naboo. You should do something about it. No? How about you just do something about it? And well, how about this kid? He's really powerful. Don't train him. He's got bad vibes. Okay. Well, this was a total waste of time. So then they go back to Naboo. And they bring the kid with them. Even though the council told them, hey, don't bring this kid with you. Put him back where he came from. If you train him anything, in any way regarding the Force, he's going to be bad news for everybody. And then they're like... And
you know what? You know what's my favorite about all this?
What?
So you know what you said about how Palpatine is playing both sides, right?
Yes.
If Darth Maul succeeded, he screws himself over.
That's the problem with all of this. Palpatine is playing fourth dimensional chess against himself. And if he loses on one side, he wins. But if he loses on the other side, he loses, period. If he kills the Jedi, and then suddenly, Anakin dies too, then he doesn't have a more powerful young apprentice to manipulate into being, space Antichrist. So I don't really know what he's planning on doing. He's trying. There are so many things that they could have done to make this make sense. If he wants the Trade Federation to basically force a vote of no confidence, how about you just tell Padme that, hey, we'll leave you alone if you vote against this senator, vote of no confidence in him, the chancellor, and then nominate this other guy to do it. I mean, and then it's just so stupid. It doesn't make any sense. There's so many possible places where he could fall into his own trap that he's setting for other people.
Because it's like he's supposed to be this masterful politician, but he's really bad at politics, actually.
I mean, yeah, he doesn't really do anything political. Like, what he does is basically put himself in a situation where he can sabotage his own plans. And he doesn't make friends with people, except for Anakin, later on in the prequels. There's just so many areas where he could have just totally screwed the pooch, and the pooch is him. So yeah, I see you guys talking about pod racing. The thing about pod racing, I feel, is something that he built the entire movie around. I really want to have pod racing, so I'm going to put these guys in a situation where they have to pod race. And then,
that's exactly it.
And then, like, after that, so he has to be on Tatooine. It could have been anywhere, and Anakin doesn't have to be from the place where Luke was at the start of the trilogy. Like, in fact, I think that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. Why? Why does he have to be there? It seems like the perfect place to put oh, my children are missing. I don't know where they could have gone, says Darth Vader. You have family that you've met before. Now, how Obi-Wan knows about, Owen Lars or whatever, I don't know. But, because he didn't meet them. But, you have family. Wouldn't that be the first place you'd look?
You would think.
So, especially if he knew that they existed.
And he can sense them in the Force.
Yes. It just doesn't make any sense. Now, I'm not trying to, this is not a discussion of the merits of the original trilogy. I think that it could work if they didn't set it up so stupidly in the prequels. Because, okay, well, they don't have to actually be his uncle and aunt. They could just be some people that he called his uncle and aunt. We're friends of somebody you knew when you were friends of your family. But they don't actually have to be friends of his family. They can be friends of Obi-Wan. It doesn't really matter. And the fact that they literally are pretty much his aunt and uncle kind of doesn't make any sense at all. Because what they should have done is just said, okay, these are random folks. They don't know you or your family at all. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to put you with his real uncle and aunt, because that would be the first place Vader would look.
Right.
That's a discussion for another time, or maybe later on this discussion.
Yeah.
So now the moment you've all been waiting for, a great big climax where 4 plot points converge all at once.
Beautiful.
So they go back to Naboo. They shouldn't have left. I understand why they left Naboo to warn. Actually, I don't understand why they left Naboo, because all they had to do was escape from the city and then try to stage something outside of it. And that probably would have been a lot less complex and convoluted, because they were just going to tell them about the Trade Federation thing, which they could have just done at the end of the movie. Probably would have made more sense.
They didn't even get any military allies while they were in Coruscant.
No, and if you're gonna say, well, what about we warned them about the Sith Lord? Okay, well, they didn't do anything about it. They didn't send any other Jedi. Oh, well, we're warning. What about the vote of no confidence? They could have done that later on too. It doesn't have to be something. There's just so many possibilities for this to go wrong. It doesn't make any sense. They left because they needed to find a way to shoehorn in Anakin so that he could be a part of the movie of the trilogy later on. So.
Yeah.
So they go back to Naboo, and they set up some elaborate heist where they're trying to seize Viceroy Gunray, who for some reason is just chilling out in the Trade Federation area. And they don't destroy, or I should say, then they have the Stage of Feint, where Jar Jar, for some reason, inexplicably, is leading the charge against the Trade Federation robots so that they can open up the distraction in the city. Meanwhile, Anakin gets detached from the rest of them and accidentally destroys the control ship that's controlling all of the droids on the surface, which begs the question why they didn't just do that in the first place. And then the Jedi are fighting Darth Maul, who I guess is trying to, like, kidnap Padme. I think that's the only thing that makes sense to me. That's the only thing I can possibly make sense. So there's 4 different plots going on at the same time, and they're running parallel to one another. They don't converge at any point. There's not a point where the battle between Darth Maul and Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon converges with the plot to destroy the army, and it just begs the question why there needed to be all this stuff. They could have just decided to, like, destroy the ship and then, like, go to rescue the Queen or capture the Viceroy with no resistance, because they don't have a real army.
Yeah.
And then it's over. The movie ends. Qui-Gon dies, and he says, "F the Council, make Anakin your Padawan, but I'm not actually a Jedi Knight yet. Shh, do it, or I'll haunt you from beyond the grave." What? And then he dies. Never mind that of course he doesn't know about Force Ghosts at this point, but it's just like, okay, so he doesn't have any reason to like Anakin. He kind of is really against it. Qui-Gon's like, we need to train Anakin, and Obi-Wan's like, what? No. And he says, okay, well, I'll just do it because Qui-Gon told me to do it, I guess. And the council's like, why? Okay, it's a bad idea. And then at the end of it, they're just like, oh, okay, sure, you can train Anakin, I guess. And then there's like a parade sequence. Oh yeah, by the way, I didn't know if I mentioned this, but the Padme, the queen that they have, is not actually the queen, but she's a fake queen that is like a handmaid, and they switched places. Why? I don't know. Couldn't they have just, disguised the queen as one of her handmaids and revealed that to us, the audience, and the Jedi, instead of like making it like some sort of big reveal? Does it really matter how she gets revealed to be the queen? I don't think so. So that's the end of the first movie.
Don't forget midichlorians.
Oh yes, and midichlorians, the single dumbest thing that they introduced to Star Wars ever, and I think it's only mentioned one other time in the prequel, so it's not even like something that winds up being consequential later on.
Yeah, it's like George Lucas is actually, in general, like in the originals, he's good at mentioning offhand things that you don't need to explain. It's just like, yeah, that's a thing that exists in the universe.
Mm-hmm.
That's fine. That writing mechanic is okay, because you can't just always detail out everything in the audience.
I don't think you should.
Right. But something as important as why Anakin is the chosen one, how the Force functions through Jedi, who are this focal point in the entire saga, should either be explained or it should just be random. Like, it shouldn't be a biological thing that makes you more prone to use the Force. It should just be the Force chooses you, or it's this thing. This is why it's this thing. This is where this thing happens.
Right, and I understand what they're trying to do. Like, there's some people who are just better at using the Force than others, but like, the problem with that is that, like, what's the point of training if some people are just like Anakin becomes like a Jedi, a full-fledged Jedi Knight, capable of taking on his own apprentice, because he does in Clone Wars by the time he's like 21. Like, I mean, Obi-Wan was 25 when he got Anakin as an apprentice, and he started at a much younger age. So yeah, there isn't a point to all this training. I mean, it like helps refine some of the stuff, but for the most part, it's like just some people are better than others, I guess. How about like the reason that some people are good at using the Force? There might be some. Why can't everybody just be Force sensitive? And like some people, and you discover it in different ways. And some people might be better at tapping into it. But having it be something that's like a biological function just defeats the purpose of it. It removes the mysticism. Yeah. And I'll talk about that at the end of this as well.
I in the extra stuff, so like Clone Wars comics, some of that. I like that they gave Anakin an apprentice.
Yeah,
I thought there was a lot of cool depth there.
I've heard that Ahsoka is a great character, or she becomes a great character anyway.
She does, but it's so counter to the movie. That was one of Anakin's biggest problems with the Jedis. They didn't take him seriously enough for him, and he didn't feel like he was getting things he deserved. So if genuinely, if he got an apprentice like that, there is a reasonable doubt that he would ever have turned. So it's weird for me that they changed. Like, I get why they changed it, but at the same time, I was just like, it was a weird whiplash thing, because that's why he's doing the whole second movie is whining. Like the whole second and third movie, he's just whining because I'm not being given enough responsibility, and I can handle it, and I deserve it. And it's like they made you a member of like the council, the youngest member, before Obi-Wan was even a master. Before Obi-Wan was like taking his trials at the age you were. It's like, man, it's weird. It's weird.
I get, and something and this is like an aside because it's not really on topic. I wish that they'd like expanded the Force usage. Like, okay, if you're gonna have people who are just better at it than other people, well, why not have Anakin like be able to like blow things up with his head or something? Like, why does it have to stop at just, oh, he can push things harder than other people, I guess. Like, why can't he like do things that we've never seen a person do before? And we don't see him do anything that we've never seen anybody do before. It's like, if he's so powerful, why is he not just destroying everybody he comes across with no trouble? Because he's supposed to be like, he's supposed to be streets ahead of everybody. So, you know, I don't know.
It's like it's the tale of two writing styles. How Anakin was written versus how Kylo Ren was written. Both of them are powerful, impatient, and honestly immature.
Yes.
But Kylo feels so much more believable and realistic, and Anakin feels so whiny and like a 7-year-old that has toy taken away. And
this is something that like I saw in the reviews I was watching. So speaking of like emotion, so when Kylo Ren gets angry about something, he like destroys a control board in a room where he is. When Luke is fighting Darth Vader for the second time, and like he gets overwhelmed with emotion, he like just beats the crap out of him. He cuts off one of his fake hands. He has 2 fake hands by this point. Like he starts going to town on him. He beats the tar out of him. He's overtaken his father, who's supposedly the chosen one. When Obi-Wan gets really pissed that Qui-Gon dies, he just fights him like he was fighting him before. There's absolutely no indication that he just lost somebody important to him. The first Jedi to ever die to a Sith in living memory. And, it's just not that big of a deal, I guess. We're just gonna fight the same way we were fighting. It's got cool choreography and whatnot, but there's, like, no tension because there's not a development of emotions that Obi-Wan clearly is feeling because you see it on his face. And you see him get angry in other scenes in other movies. So why is he not doing the same thing? And then has to like learn to tone it back through the fight or something. He doesn't. So it's just another way that the prequels they just don't really have the same emotion. They don't have any emotion until like the third movie, and by that point their goodwill's completely run out. So.
Yeah, and it doesn't feel as rewarded in the third movie.
No,
but I think for me with the Obi-Wan fight with Darth Maul, so that being kind of like the climactic moment in this movie,
right?
Really amazing music.
Great choreography. It's really fun to look at.
So for me, I would have even been okay if, because Obi-Wan is always built to be this, he's this stoic, like duty-bound character.
Right.
So if even what they could have done to kind of meet in the middle of that almost would have been like, he defeats Darth Maul, but like breaks down to a degree after that. And I think this is where like the acting catches shit in these movies, but it's the writing that gives them like nothing to work with.
Right.
Because you're right, Obi-Wan should have probably felt something. Even if he's a perfect Jedi and removes all of his emotions from his fighting, during his fighting, that's okay. But like even afterwards, he's not really like, we don't get a chance to see him sad until the funeral pyre. If I remember right. Like I don't remember anything being in there. It's just like he could have gotten upset. He could have slashed at the wall. He could have just wept even, like, and just dropped his lightsaber away from him, like almost in disgust in the moment. Like there were a lot of different ways he could have gone there.
Or he could have like started to do what he was doing to, like what Luke was doing to Vader in the last movie. Well, the last movie before the sequels. And then like catch himself and realize that that's not the Jedi way, and he needs to calm his tits, so to speak. And you know, you don't see it. It looks like the death of somebody important to him doesn't have any impact on him. There's no tears in his eyes. There's no like, this is supposed to be like the closest person to him. Basically, he doesn't have any family. Doesn't have any friends outside of the Jedi Order, except for Qui-Gon. So, I mean, it should be more impactful than it is. And if you're gonna say, like, oh, Jedi are, like, you're supposed to be not emotional, he's clearly feeling emotion, and it's not showing. Like, through his actions, through his, you know, the facial acting, sure, but through his actions, no, it's not there.
Right. And like Scrub said, like they have a moment, like he does like go up to Qui-Gon, but the whole moment is like Qui-Gon saying, "Train the boy." It's like he cares. Obi-Wan is trying to have his like death scene with Qui-Gon and like talk to him, and it's just Qui-Gon going, "It'll be fine. Just train Anakin. He's important." They again like rob Obi-Wan of his moment. They rob Qui-Gon of his death scene even. Because we're about Anakin. Because we're circle jerking Anakin.
Everything's in service of Darth Vader.
Yeah. Instead of making a world that feels real with characters that feel well written and real, that just happens to have the growth and development of Darth Vader, it's like we have the endpoint and we're just going there all no brakes. There's no brakes on this train. We're going straight there.
So the next movie is arguably worse than the first, and it is Attack of the Clones. Basic plot summary. So, like, there's an assassination attempt on Amidala, and they find out that there's clones being manufactured, and they find them, and then they find out where they're making the droids, and they attack them. And that's the movie. But you probably want more than that. So, okay. So, Attack of the Clones begins with Padme attempting to be assassinated, and why exactly? I think it's because Palpatine wants to establish a galactic army, and Padme, for some reason, is now a senator instead of the queen. I guess queen is like a title. It's not actual. It's an elected office, I guess. That doesn't make any sense, but okay. And she is now a senator for some reason. And she is opposed, for some reason, to the creation of a galactic army. I don't know why, if it's just like her culture, because they have a volunteer army and she doesn't like armies, but it seems like this is a good time to, swallow your pride and say, hey, there's a trade federation that for some reason just doesn't seem to go away. Maybe we should beef up our military funding for the time being. I digress. So they try to kill her, and the Jedi are like, we need to get to the bottom of this, but we don't really want to investigate into it, so we really just need to bodyguard her. And then they send Obi-Wan and Anakin. Now, before I continue on, I don't know why they sent Obi-Wan and Anakin. Maybe so she would feel more comfortable around them because she knew them. But she didn't really know Obi-Wan. And she barely knows Anakin. He's a totally different person. He will be a totally different person by the point that she meets him now. So they could have just sent any two random Jedi. But, they're the most important people in the story, so they have to send them. So they defend her poorly. She almost gets killed by bugs that are sent by a robot, that are sent by an assassin, that is sent by Jango Fett, that is sent by Palpatine.
I think Count Dooku's in there too.
Yes, I think. Well, I don't know. I think that Jango Fett was hired by Palpatine, though. Okay. If it was sent by Count Dooku, though, there's like layers upon. No, I think it might have been. I think you're right. It might have been Count Dooku. So
Dooku hired Jango, and then Dooku responds to Palpatine.
The bugs were sent by a robot. The robot was sent by a shape-shifting assassin. The assassin was sent by Jango Fett. Jango Fett was sent by Dooku. Dooku was sent by Palpatine. Palpatine was sent by George Lucas. George Lucas was sent on a mission by God. And God was, I guess, told to do it by the bugs. So there's a circle. It's like poetry, it rhymes. So
it's a circle of suck.
Circle of suck. So they chase after somehow they're able to find this assassin against all reason and odds. They're able to chase him down, and they chase after him, her, whatever, into a nightclub, and then they cut off her hand, his hand, whatever, and they use that. They start interrogating him, her. I don't know, honestly, because it's not established. It appears to be a woman, but then it turns into some sort of lizard thing at the end.
Shapeshifters transcend gender. That's basically it is a shapeshifter.
Okay, we'll just say them then for clarity. And then Jango Fett's can't have him divulging too much information, so he shoots them, and they die. And they're able to find out, or then they take the space needle, and they're like, it's got some weird hieroglyphics on it. I bet we can trace this back to another planet. That makes sense, I guess. It could be sent from it could just be have those weird logos on it because that's the manufacturer, but there could be let's think about this, okay? So that dart came from a specific gun, but that bullet could have come from anywhere in the galaxy. It's not guaranteed to lead you to where the bullet came from. So saying, we'll see, we'll use the Force or the archives or the Force's archives to determine where this bullet came from. It could have been made on just some random factory planet, 1,000 miles. There are factory planets. It's established later on in this movie. So
it's weird too, because it's hey, I'm Jango Fett, a very good bounty hunter. I'm gonna use this special dart only made on one planet that I happen to be residing on.
Yeah, and there's also no way that he knows that this is supposed to be discovered. Like, there's no way.
Yeah.
So, like, they go off and, they're trying to find out where this dart comes from, and they say, oh, well, there's a center of gravitational force, and it should be right here, or something. And then a kid says, well, if it could have been deleted from the National Archives. Like, okay, so it's stolen, like, freaking National Treasure's Declaration of Independence. Okay, that movie made a lot of sense. So, let's foreshadow its creation by having it in Star Wars Clone Wars, or Star Wars Attack of the Clones. Then he, like, says, okay, well, I don't know where this is. It's beyond the Outer Rim. Let's go talk to some random fat diner schlub that I know from my party days. Dex!
Good old Dex!
And for some reason, like, it's not explained why. There are no hints as to why this is the case. But, like, Dex knows where this is manufactured. Now, is Dex like a traveling merchant who just decided to become a diner, a diner drive-ins and dives location for Sky Guy Fieri? I don't know. It's not explained. It's just, he just knows, okay? Okay, why didn't the Jedi know then? Why does Dex know? If this stuff can be, all the stuff is found in, like, the most mysterious of places. That's like a Star Wars thing, man. Check your knowledge. Okay, well, shouldn't you at least explain why he knows it then? Like, it's just, there's so many problems. The existence of this weird 50s diner schlub, him knowing something that the Jedi and nobody else on the entire quadrillion population of Coruscant can find out. It's ridiculous.
It's like the intention, at least as I understand it, is to be like, okay, so and maybe I'm making a reach here to make this less egregious, but like Dex is like an informant potentially for Obi-Wan, and has been in the past when Obi-Wan's being detective noir Obi-Wan or whatever.
Right.
But like we don't get anything
now
that shows like Dex's credentials in any way on this. Like Obi-Wan could have had like a throwaway line that's like, I'll go see my buddy Dex. He always seems to have information on the most secretive of things, or something like that. And that could have like kind of set that up a little bit better. Also, the butt crack scene was unnecessary.
Yeah.
I think like almost 99% of the humor in the prequels just missed me. It like my humor comes from memeing on these movies. Like none of the jokes in the movies were funny.
No, like there was like this scene, like there's a quote from like I think it's one of the producers. He's just like, every scene is just so dense. There's just so much going on, and like that's the thing. It's ironically really true because there's just so much bull crap thrown into every scene that doesn't need to be there.
Yeah.
So like I mean, it could have been something like that. He could have just said, I have a friend. I have a friend, and then like throw in something that would lead you to believe that this guy is more than he seems, beyond just the fact that he knows something. The knowledge, this sweet, weird, ethereal knowledge, we need to know why he knows it, because some weird guy knowing more than the National Archives or like the Library of Congress is suspect, and there needs to be a reason why he knows it. He does not appear to be a spy. He appears to be some grubby diner man, and we are expected to believe this guy is like some sort of like knowledge of all things nebulous and ethereal beyond the knowledge of man, and otherwise it's just crazy. Oh man, John Wick he's the John Wick of the Star Wars universe. I'd like to see that. Maybe give some depth to this one-dimensional character. So yeah. So there's that. That's like the first bit of this movie.
While this is all happening, the worst part of the prequels, maybe the whole saga, maybe,
I
is
think it's the
going
worst part
on.
of the entire saga because I know what you're talking about.
Because Obi-Wan's investigating and being Detective Obi-Wan, working crime at night, while Anakin is still bodyguarding Padme and is off on Naboo, frolicking and being generally the creepiest dude alive. But this is how we write romance, right, Georgie? This is how we write romance.
Yes. So I'm gonna talk about that at length later on.
Yeah.
But just know this romance is like the worst on-screen romance of all time. If you think Twilight has it worse, this is a billion times worse than Twilight because these characters have no chemistry. These actors have no chemistry. And it's incredibly forced because they need to make baby Luke and Leia. That's why they got married at the end of it. It's bad. It's really, really bad. And they do he bodyguards her by putting her out where she is clearly visible to the outside world. Because like if I'm thinking, okay, well she's not on Coruscant anymore. We have people who are probably watching her, even if they're not assassins. They're probably watching her constantly. By the way, the reason that assassin was sent to Padme's house to kill her, and the assassin then decides to make the absolutely egregious decision to try and kill the Jedi for no reason, instead of doing what they were sent there to do, which is kill Padme. And they could have, while their shapeshifter, they could have very easily turned into something not resembling the person they were before, and then slipped out, and then went back to what they were doing because they didn't tell because, I mean, yeah, Padme's probably expecting something, but she didn't, like, leave the room she was in. She's clearly visible to the outside world from where the assassin is sitting. There's no reason, like, that she's not sleeping in an inner bedroom. It's just, like... It's incredibly stupid. So then they go to Naboo, which is, like, the first place I would think they would go. Because that's where she lives. And they spend all of their time in brightly colored clothing with no facial protection, outside most of the time, in clear view of anyone who would potentially be looking to assassinate them, and then proceed to just talk about stupid, dumb, pointless bullcrap the entire movie.
It's... Yeah. And as Scrubs has dropped a few of those lines, and I've seen, I think, one more. Yeah, sorry. She's intoxicating. You're in my very soul, tormenting. Who wrote these lines?
George
I
Lucas.
want it. George.
He's the only
Sit
person.
down with me.
Yeah, let me look at the writer for Attack of the Clones and see if it's just George or if there's somebody else on board. Screenplay by George Lucas and Jonathan Hales, who has not had a screenwriting credit since. At least not in movie, not in film. Nope, not a screenwriting credit since. This ruined him, I'm pretty sure. I don't recognize any of the movies that he directed. He screenwrote except for The Scorpion King.
Hey, Scorpion King! Shout out to my boy The Rock.
Yeah, and I don't recognize any of the TV shows that he was a screenwriter for either. So yeah, this film, like, I'm pretty sure, like, ruined him just because I don't see him doing anything. Granted, I mean, he's like 83 now, so maybe he just got tired of it after that point, and he, like, wrote the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles or something, or he was a writer on it. That was in I guess it was the 93. Yeah, he was I guess he was a screenwriter for that. And that's the most famous thing he's known for. I think he also directed an episode of Dallas. And that's it.
That's not good romance. I think romantic dialogue is one of my weak spots as a writer. But I'm confident that I could have written this better than this man and George. It's just really, it's like weirdly like bad Shakespearean, like it's supposed to come across as like poetic, and like I get that maybe it's like, oh yeah, we're gonna make Anakin seem really weird and like awkward and stuff like that, but it's not. He just sounds stupid. He never becomes endearing, right? Like awkward, shy, not used to love is endearing at a certain point. It's never endearing. Padme is dealing with a borderline stalker that makes her uncomfortable and makes advances at her, and she says no, and then just eventually she like Stockholms herself, or gets Stockholmed into just being like, this is fine. I loved him all along. To like the dude that's like 6 years younger than her, which it wasn't as creepy. In my hindsight, I thought they were much different, like further in age gap, but they weren't as much whenever I looked it up recently. I was like, oh.
It's just so bad. It's indescribely terrible because I just can't even think of a single thing about it that made it believable to me. It wasn't. No. And a lot of that's because, and I'll talk about this at length later, they don't have any chemistry, they don't have anything in common at all. They could have written something that made them have something in common so that even if the acting sucked, they could have built something on it, but they didn't. It would have been pretty easy, and they just made it as unbelievable as possible. Oh yeah, and like they just had to make it forbidden for some reason, even though there's not really a good reason why Jedi can't love. It's just something that we're told. Oh, it's about emotions and suppressing your emotions, but like we see at least Obi-Wan is a pretty emotional person throughout most of the film and most of the trilogy. Really, he has emotion, and they don't piss on him for that. They don't piss on Anakin for being a brat. They don't piss on anybody for having emotion. It's not something that's looked down on. If it's about connections or something, fine. But why does Padme say that she's forbidden from being from marrying? Like, she's a senator. They get married all the time. It's usually actually something most senators do at some point. So, like, why is it forbidden for her? It doesn't make any sense. So, it's questionable. So there's that. Then we get, it's necessary for character building, but it's not necessary for the story at all. It is functionally useless for the story.
Yeah.
The return to Tatooine. All it accomplishes is killing off Anakin's mom.
I hate it.
It's so stupid.
The sand.
I hate sand, and I hate my mom dying, and I hate the Tusken Raiders. So they go back there because he senses that his mom's dying or something, and they head back to Tatooine, and they use this as a potential area to introduce Owen and his wife. I can't remember what her name is. Under her, or I should say, who was the son and daughter-in-law of Ben Lars, who botched me and then like married her and unslaved her, and then she got kidnapped, and that's basically the only reason that is in there is so that we can be introduced to them beforehand, so that when Luke gets pawned off on them, at least it was set up in advance. And also they need to know where Shmi is. So he goes over there to the Tusken Raiders' house, and he just commits light genocide. and he comes back and he tells Padme about it, and for some reason she's like endeared by this, and she comforts him instead of being kind of creeped out and terrified.
Yeah.
I mean, this is like an unplanned field trip for her, because she was supposed to be on Naboo the whole time, and suddenly she gets dragged along on this little romp on nasty desert planet where she met grubby little Anakin when she was 3 or whatever, and she has to go there because Anakin says so, not because she wants to. And then he kills a bunch of faceless individuals, but it's okay because he hated them, and they're animals, and he slaughtered them like animals.
Like
not
animals.
just the men, but the women and the children too.
So I have a thing to run by you.
Yes.
So what if Shmi knows that her son went to go to be a Jedi, that all the Jedi go to Coruscant because it's the big city, right? The big planet.
Right.
It could be any number of things. It could still been the Tusken Raiders. It could have been the Hutts. It could have even been the Trade Federation in some way. Maybe they invaded Tatooine or something along those lines. But somehow, Shmi dies. So we keep that part. But her husband, her now widower, or what's that? Doesn't matter. The male version, but
Widower.
Okay, so yeah, he tries to reach out and connect to the Jedi, and he just sends some message that goes through a bunch of different channels, like a freaking letter, basically, just trying to find Anakin. It finally does find Anakin. You can find him on Naboo or wherever you need to at that point, but he doesn't go to Tatooine to kill them all. He doesn't just randomly visit. He gets told, "Hey, your mom is dead. This happened." And if it was something with the Trade Federation, it could even turn into more hatred towards the Jedi and towards the existing government for not protecting them or doing anything about the Trade Federation. Or if it was the Hutts or the Tusken Raiders, he could still go back and kill them all, but he has a reason to be there now. Like, it feels like the most simplest thing where you could still introduce these people and you could still cause Anakin trauma to, like, reveal his more emotional and dark side without it just being herder going to Tatooine.
Right, and the whole way it's introduced is just like, oh, he has a dream about it or something. I think that what you said, the first option, is the only way you can make it work, because he doesn't need to go on some sort of murderous rampage against the Tusken Raiders, because they don't serve a function in the movie except to kill Shmi. They're not some part of a greater evil conglomerate like the Trade Federation. They're just something else to throw in there to help you. Oh, remember Star Wars, the first one? Remember that? Let's remind you again that you're watching Star Wars. So let's have the Tusken Raiders. But they weren't the Tusken Raiders before. They were the Sand People. We changed into Tusken Raiders, so for some reason, and then I guess they're changed back to Sand People in A New Hope, because that's actually happens after this movie. And let's just do that instead. Instead of having something that made sense to the overall plot. Like, why does... anyway, I don't want to bother with it. I don't remember what leads them to Geonosis at all. Like, at all. I think it has something to do with Count Dooku, and they get clones from whatever Camino.
So yeah, because Obi-Wan is still working that whole, like, I don't know which one you'd want to call the A plot, which you want to call the B plot.
Well,
they're both F plots.
This is a key problem with the movies. Who's the main character?
Yeah.
There are two main characters. There isn't an A plot and a B plot. There's two A plots, which is confusing. They're both the main character.
So it's after Obi-Wan goes to Camino and they, like, show him, like, Lama Su, like, goes like, "Hey, here's your clone army. That's great." He looks for his bounty hunter. He finds Django. Django runs away. He puts a homing beacon on Django's ship and traces Django back to Geonosis.
Okay, that explains
That's
that.
how they got to Geonosis.
Okay, but I don't know how, like, Anakin got there. They just, like, get a space letter.
Yeah.
The Force tell him to go to Geonosis.
Obi-Wan gets off word to the council, and I think that's how Anakin finds out. But I don't know why he brings Padme with him.
This is just a constant problem with the prequels. People being in places where they don't need to be. Why would you bring a 9-year-old to a war zone? And then not just bring him to a war zone, but bring him behind the lines into the city that is being actively laid siege to by robots that shoot electric balls of lightning at people. It could kill you very easily. Why was he even able to get where he was and then blow up the, blow up the droid control ship? Like, why are people where they're not supposed to be? Padme should have just stayed on the ship or something. I mean, why is she fighting in this?
I don't know why they didn't kill more Jedi or have more Jedi, like, be involved in this than there were. Because, like, it gets so boneheaded. Because Anakin gets, Obi-Wan sends his message, his SOS. It gets to Anakin, it gets to the council, and it's like, we're not gonna
do anything.
But because Scrubs is right, because Padme pushes it too. She's like, we gotta save him, and it's like, why? Why do you two need to go?
Okay, Anakin is Obi-Wan's apprentice. He should theoretically care about Obi-Wan.
Yes.
I get that, like, Padme probably cares about him on an intellectual, like, inter-sentient, sapient species level, but she doesn't know him at all. She hasn't spoken to him but, like, 5 minutes in 10 years. So why is she the one who has to push Anakin to go save him? That doesn't make any sense. She shouldn't have to be the one who pushes him. She shouldn't be pushing him at all. If he doesn't feel like doing it, I mean, and that's the thing. What are they going to do against an army of battle droids? Okay, they end up being fine, but they shouldn't have been fine because those are insurmountable odds. Okay, so they go to Geonosis, and there's like this stupid, dumb conveyor belt sequence where they're like, not where they're in danger, quote unquote, of being crushed, but like there's no tension building. It's just a bunch of random things happening. Somehow, like, R2-D2 and C-3PO wind up there too. I don't remember how. And he like trades heads with a battle droid, and it's supposed to be a ha-ha funny moment, and it's really not. Because, again, this movie does not know how to handle humor. And then the three mains get captured, and it's probably the most interesting point of the whole movie because they're all put in situations where they don't have weapons to defend themselves with that they're used to using. And then they get their lightsabers back, and it's just easy to kill those weird monsters again. And then, like, they're just like, what was it, like, shoot them or something, I think is one of the line that's uttered here. And then they just, like, send all the battle droids in. Okay, well, we're not going to have a fair fight in a Coliseum match, so we're just going to, kill you with battle droids. And somehow the rest of the Jedi show up and kill all the battle droids, and Jango Fett dies to Mace Windu, and then they chase after Count Dooku, who could be leading them anywhere in the entire planet. They don't know where he's going. They don't know he's going back to his base. He could be leading them into a trap, and logically he probably is, but they follow him anyway, despite having no idea where he's going. And then they fight with him in a big, dumb lightsaber fight and the only thing that is lost is Anakin's hand. Nothing else happens because nobody else is wounded, and Anakin doesn't seem to be too disturbed by this. And we see Yoda fight, but it's dumb. It's stupid. It looks... I mean, like, he's got this really dinky little short lightsaber that actually makes it harder for him to fight. So... and nothing happens. Nothing changes. The status quo is altered in no way because, like, Count Dooku is a pointless, dumb villain that is a complete waste of an incredibly talented actor in Christopher Lee. And, like, it's just dumb and stupid, and it's a waste of time. The whole sequence is stupid. The end of the movie comes, and then Padme and Anakin get married in a ceremony that is 100% unearned. And I think that's the end of the movie. Beyond the Clone Wars have, which is probably the best part of the whole freaking prequels, the existence of the Clone Wars series. So
I think what makes episode 2 feel so bad, I think the thing that ruins it the most is Anakin and Padme's relationship. Padme has no reason, not a single reason to like Anakin. He is creepy. He is uncomfortable. He is not very, like, suave. It's not like he's really putting the moves on her. He's just being really weird and, like, exaggerate, like, dramatic. And then he is violent and kills a bunch of people and tells her about it. So, like, she has no reason to be so connected to him and being, like, pushing to go to Geonosis with him, and then just everything she does. Like, he can be obsessed with her, that's fine, but her, like, response to it doesn't make any sense. And that, like, kind of pushes everything else in the narrative being bad. The Yoda fight, I didn't mind as much. I think Yoda's, like, weird fucking, like, I'm a tiny creature that's nimble as hell and jumps all over the place. That doesn't bother me as much. But, like, the Dooku fight, we didn't really get anything out of. I agree with that. And, like, the weirdly, one of the things that I like the most out of Clone Wars, this area of time, is, like you said, kind of, it's not even something from the movie. It's extra stuff. All of the lore that we got about the Mandalorians, because Jango's a Mandalorian,
or like an offshoot of them or something. He studied under them.
It's weird because the Mandalorian culture changes in the TV series. It is not the same as, not directly the same, it's close as the books and the history of, like, the planet of Mandalore. It's a little bit different. Like with Jango, they're a warrior. They're still like a warrior group, but it's like they adopt war orphans and make them Mandalorians. But there's nothing about taking their helmet off or anything like that. But it's still, like, very much like a warrior, not cult, but like culture, like lodge almost. But there's a lot of really interesting development to that lore. But that notwithstanding, Scrubs, a lot of times psychopaths are very charismatic. Anakin is not charismatic. Ted Bundy was extremely charismatic, and he seduced plenty of people, and, like, he had relationships, he had girlfriends and stuff like that. Anakin is just weird. Anakin would be like an incel.
Yeah.
Like, he's more down that pathway.
Like, good looking, but that's, like, all he has going for him.
Yeah, like, he's not to the point where he's raging on a Reddit forum, but, like, he is more in line with their, like, that mentality, that behavior of, like, grandiose statements like, well, why isn't she responding nice? I bought her something nice. I did something nice for her. That means I get to sleep with her now, right? Why isn't this working? Like, that's more close to Anakin's, like, mentality than anything else.
And the weird thing is about this universe is that it's just, like, everything is just so sterile. There's no real romance that happens. Like, okay, something that I saw mentioned in the Plinkett reviews I watched Not a single character except for Senator Organa is married. There's not a single person who, before the end of the movie, on screen, except for like Mundi, who is not shown to have a wife in the movies. It's extra stuff. Nobody has any relationships. No no family, no friends, no wives. And it makes it just feel like literally actually sterile, because there's just no romance in a series that had a ton of romance in the original trilogy. It's like a pretty big selling point for it. You know, the Leia and Han romance is like one for the ages, right? Something that a lot of people remember fondly looking back on. There's like none of that in this at all. So that basically wraps up that. There's a lot of problems with Attack of the Clones. The fight at the end is just it serves no purpose except that they need to have a big lightsaber fight, because it's what Star Wars is. There's no emotion behind it, because I think that you don't see Darth Tyrannus until like the last hour of the movie. So he's not he's just mentioned constantly. He's never seen. He was a Jedi once. Okay, fine, but that's not. We don't know anything about him. There's counts in this universe. Maybe
what's that all about?
They don't explain it. They'll explain it in the novelization. It's fine. Whatever. And there's so many things that are just not explained at all, because the movie assumes that you know everything. It assumes so much. And part of that is because the movie doesn't have character in it to whom these things are being explained. All of this stuff is presupposed by everybody, because everybody knows all this stuff already. Why would they feel the need to explain it? Because they know who he is. They know who Count Dooku is. They know they know what's going on with all this weird politicking in the Senate. It's super obvious to them. Why would they explain it? Maybe you should have somebody in the movie that doesn't have any idea what's going on, so that you can exposit to them and also to the audience. So.
You know what's crazy? Kind of lending towards your points there as well. The thing is, if you hadn't have seen the original movies, these prequels would make so little sense. Like, they should be written to explain to somebody and build the universe for somebody that's never seen the original Star Wars movies. But they don't. You have to know what happens in the future to understand this past bit. Like, entirely. Not just specific parts of it. All of it. Like...
Yes. It should be the opposite. Not... People need to know what the prequels are, or I should say, know about Star Wars heading into this to make sense of the prequels. But the prequels should be the starting point. They should make more sense than the original trilogy, but they make less sense. So there's like another. So that's basically the end of that. I think we can move on to the last of the movies and then discuss various things about the movie as after that.
I think the third movie is the strongest out of the three.
I feel like the only problem with the only really problem with the third movie is that it is all of the stuff that is just a general problem for the trilogy as a whole, as opposed to things that are just individually bad about episode 3. But it is the strongest, I think.
Yeah, I think so. It's just episode 2 And episode 3, they both had really good fight scenes, like with the clones and the droids and stuff like that. And like 3 starts off right into some action. There's actually humor. Like it starts off really well, and like Anakin and Obi-Wan's relationship is actually like interesting, kind of. It actually feels a little bit nice and almost earned. But yeah, I think just as a blanket statement, the fighting scenes, the music were always good in this. The excess use of green screens was unnecessary. The acting felt really flat because the writing was shit. Just on that kind of stuff. Because I think I could talk about that in all 3 movies, but mostly 2 and 3. I really liked all of the war scenes, with especially the clones and droids.
I think that they do a good job, at the very least, of like making some of this stuff make sense, but we still get the weird stuff in this movie. So like the first movie opens with like, I mean, it's just them it's literally negotiations. There's no action. There's no action, there's not really any emotion, because I know that Empire starts with the invasion of Hoth, but it doesn't literally start with that. It just happens shortly thereafter. But there's some scene setting that happens throughout it, so it doesn't feel quite as sterile. I don't remember the start of Jedi was like, reclaiming Han Solo, and the start of A New Hope was the last of the rebels being pursued by the Empire in a big, huge, enormous ship, and they have this little dinky, weird hammerhead shark-looking thing. So yeah, I mean, the first movie in the prequel trilogy starts off with like boringness. The second one, an explosion, but then more boringness. The third one has an actual fight scene. So it has that going for it, at least.
We get more, just any time that Padme and Anakin are on screen together is bad. Get a bit more of that. We have the whole Palpatine purposely gets himself abducted because somehow the Trade Federation was able to make some spearhead attack to Coruscant. That's whatever. General Grievous gets thrown in now. He gets shoehorned into the story because we need another cool villain guy.
And that's problematic, because unless you've seen the Clone Wars or just Clone Wars, you don't know who he is.
Yeah, you have like no idea. He is now this general, and you're like,
okay,
that's cool, I guess. Oh, he has 4 arms and he has lightsabers in all of them. He supposedly has killed all these Jedi. When? Where? How? What? He's not even force sensitive. Like, he just his whole, I like him as a character. Like, I like his origin and stuff like that, but I had to go outside of the movies to find it. Which is a cop-out. But you basically, like, somehow, or no way, because Anakin has told Palpatine, he's like confided in him about him giving into his wrath. So now Palpatine's like, yes, it's time to get rid of the dead weight. So Anakin and Obi-Wan rescue Palpatine, and Palpatine kind of like impresses upon Anakin to kill Count Dooku, to be, more solidifying his evilness.
Right. It's like, okay, yeah, and that's something that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, because like, okay, he is like, oh, I'm not gonna kill him, it's not the Jedi way, and then Palpatine says, do it exactly one time, and he kills him. Okay. What? And by the way, I think Obi-Wan's sitting here watching this, and he doesn't try to intervene.
Well, no, wait. Didn't Obi-Wan get knocked unconscious?
I
He's
don't
like,
remember. I have no idea. But
I
even if
think
he
he's
didn't,
not.
okay, even if he didn't, would Palpatine have known that Obi-Wan got knocked unconscious? Was this really the time to start flexing him into making him your Sith underlordling, whatever? Like, couldn't you find a better time to do this? I mean, and that's the thing. It doesn't actually build anything in Anakin's character, because it's just like, oh, he goes from being not somebody he goes from somebody who kills a bunch of innocent women and children to being somebody who executes somebody in cold blood, but somebody who is actually actively trying to kill him. So it's actually not an increase in his evilness. It's just something that I guess is there to remind you that he has darkness or something. What I honestly think they should have done is have him choose not to kill Dooku, and then Dooku so Anakin's not a terrible person, I guess. And then you see him build towards that, be seduced by the dark side instead of just being told to kill somebody that you don't really know all that well.
It's like, I think this is a prevalent issue in all three movies. Palpatine was already the big, scary emperor in the originals. He didn't need to be like particularly clever or even like detailed. He just needed to be big and evil. In episodes 1, 2, and 3, he needs to be smart. He needs to be intelligent, conniving, and manipulative. And he's just never shown this. It all happens off screen. Like, a majority of like to reasonably get Anakin as manipulated as he is, and as like that mentor kind of mentality, so I feel like so much more has to happen off screen than what we see on screen. Because on screen, it's like, it's almost as bad as Anakin and Padme's relationship. Like, it just doesn't make sense for what we see on screen. But
like, he already has a mentor.
Obi-Wan. Yeah, he has Obi-Wan, but for some reason, like Palpatine is like this super mentor that, like, yes, he can confide in him and he can talk to him about things that he can't talk to Obi-Wan about. The guy who helped save him from slavery, got him in the Order, has been like a brotherhood to him this whole time. Like, he connects more to Palpatine than him. Why? Show me why.
Exactly.
Like,
if you're going and I don't think it's wrong to have that, but you need to show us, like, what you can't just, this is something I'll talk about later. The prequels are like probably the ultimate case of show don't tell. They tell us all this stuff, but they don't show it, and it's done to the detriment of the movies, because I don't know why I should why I should think that Anakin is potentially subject to being seduced by the dark side. And I mean, this is something I want to talk about later. He isn't really even seduced by the dark side. He's tricked. Like, that's a pretty big difference in motivation for succumbing to it. Like in A New Hope, I'm pretty sure Obi-Wan, when he's expositing to Luke, who doesn't know anything about the Force, yeah, he was seduced by the dark side. In this movie, oh, I know a way to keep your wife from dying. And then he's like, okay, teach me, please, I need to know. And then he doesn't teach it. He was literally tricked into doing it. And then he just sticks around with Palpatine because I guess he has nothing else. Like, that's the only thing I can figure.
it just, I don't like it. I just don't like it. It just comes, it's that simple. I just think it's poorly written, and there's like you said, there are other options, and there are many that could have been pursued that were not, but instead we're here, and we're told that this is where we're here, and this is where we belong, and this is how it happens.
I don't want it.
I don't want it.
So
that's what he should have said instead.
Yeah, so I don't know what exactly, I can't remember what happens after that. Oddly enough, I'm more familiar with the plots of two objectively worse movies than I am with this one. But
this is when Palpatine starts tempting him even more with like, I can teach you how to prevent death. Or I mean, excuse me, this Sith Lord knew how to prevent death.
Yes,
How does
exactly.
Palpatine know about a Sith Lord story? It's not a story a Jedi would tell you.
But it is a
The
story
best meme.
it is a story that senators would tell you.
Yeah, because he knows somehow. Like Anakin is this stupid, and then
Like,
Anakin's starting to have more visions. Padme dying.
The only way that it could have been more explicit that he was a Sith Lord is if he handed him a note card that said, like, in, like, you know, school note passing text, like, by the way, I'm a Sith Lord. And that, like, he basically told him, only Sith know this story. And by the way, there are no Sith left except for me. So it follows that I'm a Sith Lord. And he's like, oh my god, is Palpatine a Sith Lord? So, like, I don't remember all the details, but it's got some good action sequences. For some reason, okay, so they're, like, trying to figure out what to do next. So what about the droid attack on the Wookiees? So they go to Kashyyyk to say, oh, by the way, here's something else that you probably remember from the first movie. There's Wookiees, so we're gonna send Yoda out there. Good relations with the Wookiees I have. And, like, so that's where he is during Order 66. And then Obi-Wan's like, gotta go deal with Grievous, I guess. So they go to some planet, I don't remember where it is. And
Utapau.
Okay. And they fight, and they kill him, and he shoots a gun, and it's uncivilized for some reason. And then, and all the while, Anakin's being manipulated. And then he goes up to Mace Windu, who's been a prick to him this whole trilogy. Like, oh, we'll put you on the council, but we're not going to make you a Jedi Master. Literally, just okay, I don't like you. You've done all the work for us up to this point in the war, but I don't like you. I don't trust you. I've literally done pretty much nothing except cut off Jango Fett's head, and that's it. But I don't like you, so we'll put you on the council, but you're not really a master. We're just putting you on the council. And he's pissed off about this, understandably, although it comes across being really petulant. So he confides in Mace Windu, I guess because he's like the only person besides Yoda that we actually know in this trilogy who's on Coruscant at the time. And he's like, I think that... Wow, I don't know how he came to this conclusion, but I think that Chancellor Palpatine might be a Sith Lord. And everybody seems completely caught off guard by this. A Sith Lord? We must go right away. And then they proceed to, like, walk at a normal pace out of this hangar where they're hanging out instead of running. And then then he's like, if what you've told me is true, you will have gained my trust. And then Anakin walks in on them, knowing very well that he's a Sith Lord, and Mace is like trying to kill him, and then he interrupts him, and Mace Windu ends up dying, and he looks, Palpatine looks disgusting. And then he executes Order 66, and all the Jedi die. Except for Obi-Wan and Yoda.
Yeah. It's, and then all the ones that they, like, strung out in the different books and video games and such now. But it's, like... Like I said in chat, I know that Anakin has to fall in this trilogy.
Right.
Anakin needs to be risen up, he needs to be brought up, and then he needs to be laid low to drive him to the Sith.
Right.
I just don't like how they did it.
Yeah.
Anakin is given no all he has known his entire life would have been in the history class is the Sith are evil, they're liars, and they use the dark side of the Force, which is inherently negative.
Mm-hmm.
He then just goes on Palpatine's word. Okay, he's a mentor. Okay, he definitely. I agree with chat on that. Palpatine probably treated him like an adult versus Obi-Wan treating him like an apprentice still kind of for a long time. Like their bond was built on a different power dynamic. But it doesn't feel like he has any reason to trust Palpatine. Palpatine hasn't given any reason to show like, yeah, I can make this happen. He's just doing it like purely out of this weird desperation fear instead of like any malevolent reason. And maybe that is reason enough. Maybe I'm like off the rails, that it's just him being afraid was enough to drive him that direction. But like I didn't feel like he had enough reason or motivation or what have you to flip sides, and especially to flip them after he had been like saying it's not the Jedi way to kill, or no, he killed somebody even though it wasn't the Jedi way. Now trying to take the high road on Mace because he wants to talk to Palpatine to find out how to save Padme.
Right. I mean, and it's that's the problem. The whole thing is, you know, I can't think of what the word I'm looking for is. It's this whole thing is built on the idea that Anakin needs Palpatine's expertise to save people from dying, but that's not being seduced by the dark side of the Force. It's not power. He doesn't want power. He wants something that's basically altruistic in nature. That's not how people usually win people over to the dark side. They promise them something that they can't have or they shouldn't be able to have, and that's what Sith do. They deal in power and strength and things like that. But what we see on screen is him basically trying to trick Anakin into being a Sith.
You know, I think what it is, I think what it really does come back to me, I don't know. I can't put my finger on it quite. Like, Anakin's always been this impetuous child, right?
Mm-hmm.
He just... Maybe it's he didn't feel very strong to begin with, because like you said, he never really had any unique powers or abilities. He just kind of did. He just kind of existed as another Jedi.
Mm-hmm.
But his like... how do I want to word it? He always seemed to go from no, that's not what it is. It's the writing of like get his build up. So his reactions of like anger or fear to things, those kind of track to me of like, yes, that'd be something that would make me angry. My mom was killed by somebody. Yes, I'd be angry. I keep having visions of my wife dying. Yes, I would be afraid. But it's like these really shoehorned plot points. Like, it's just, we need Anakin to be angry, or we need Anakin to be afraid and manipulative, like, have the ability to be manipulated. So, we're going to throw this in. This happens now, so that he can get there. Again, it just felt like we had this nice piece of art that we is completed, this beautiful piece of art, and we know we needed to get there, so we're just gonna... Actually, this metaphor is breaking down. It felt like his ways to get there felt forced. The building blocks felt really forced.
What he could have done, and the thing is, like, I mean, the thing about the dark side of the Force, and I'm not like a Star Wars expert by any means. It's not it's about like feeding off of your emotions and using them to make you stronger. that's you know, and the Jedi are supposed to be like sagely. They aren't necessarily emotionless, but they are far less, you know, they're wrathful or anything, because wrath leads to doing bad things. Use your head instead of your heart most of the time is kind of the Jedi way. So what they really could have done is make it so that Anakin is put in a situation where it feels good. I understand what they were doing with the Tusken Raiders kind of leads down that path, but there's no build up to it. It's just something that comes out of nowhere. It feels really, like you said, it feels really forced. Well, what they could have done is, like your suggestion, have the Federation do it. Like, they occupy Tatooine, they put it under their thumb, and then the Trade Federation basically ends up waging war against all the common folk, and she ends up dying. And he's mad at the Republic, but he's also really mad at the Trade Federation, so he engages in some really violent behaviors. Of course, the problem is violence against robots isn't necessarily something that's as impactful as violence against human beings. So maybe don't have all of the Trade Federation people be pawns be robots. Maybe just spitballing here. It just doesn't. It's not as impactful. Same with the clones being basically red shirts that don't serve any function, have no emotion, and are easily corruptible.
We're meant to be expendable, sir. As
we see with the Order 66, all it takes is Palpatine saying, execute Order 66 for all of the clones to just kill the people who they'd worked with for years up to this point. It's just so bizarre that that's all it takes to switch that to make that switch flip, and it's a really traumatic scene. But then you see like Anakin do something that's like really freaking evil. Like 5 minutes after he basically kills Mace Windu, kill a bunch of kids. Why don't you?
Yeah. And we need to show how evil he is now.
Yeah. Like literally in movie time, it was 5 minutes later, pretty much. No time has elapsed, and he is sent on a mission to commit one of the most horrific acts that is seen in Star Wars, if not the most horrific act that is seen in Star Wars. And like, I mean, I understand it's supposed to be traumatic and it's a meme scene, so it's like kind of funny when we watch it now. But it's like, okay, how did he go from being somebody who was like, what have I done, when I was literally doing something in my own best interest to save the woman that I care about indirectly, and now he's like, oh, I guess I'll just go kill some kids, you know, as you do on a Tuesday. So,
like you do on Tuesday.
And then like Commander Cody like turns on Obi-Wan and he kills Cody. And I don't remember how it gets to this point. Somehow Yoda survives the attack on Kashyyyk, because like practically the whole plot of this movie, like 70% of it occurs over the course of like a single day. And so like the stuff on Apatow or Poo-Poo 2, whatever, Poo-Poo 2 and Kashyyyk, and on Coruscant when he kills a bunch of kids, all that happens within like 24 hours of each other, as does I think the conflict on Mustafar, where he's like, hey, go kill these stupid Trade Federation bozos, and I'm gonna form an empire because the Jedi suck. A few Jedi decided they were going to kill me, and that means all of them are bad. You've trusted them for thousands of years, but okay, F that. This is my party now. And
listen, real life has proven to me that would probably happen.
Yeah, it might. But I guess it's just so it just feels like really rushed because you don't see any progression. You don't see the impact of what he just said on the people that he's talking to. They're just like, yeah, sure, we'll elect you as an emperor forever. Go, good job. And the Jedi, this whole thing is predicated on the idea that Mace Windu decides to kill him. Otherwise, they're not going to grant him emergency powers, and he's not going to be able to execute Order 66 without just lying to everybody. Oh yeah, what if a few Jedi survive and they say, that's actually not true? What if most of the Jedi survive? You can say Order 66 was a retaliatory action, but he doesn't know that Mace Windu is going to barge in there and kill him.
Right.
And if someone says, oh, it's because he's manipulating them through the Force, or their vision has been clouded by the Force. Okay, can he just, mind control everybody in the galaxy? Since when is he more powerful than Anakin? He's not. It's not established that he's more powerful than Anakin. Anakin's supposed to be more powerful than he is. So, how can he control everybody in the galaxy simultaneously? Where does his power end? I guess he has unlimited power according to him, but...
As far as the Jedi are concerned, I do feel like the point for them, and this is another thing that's explained a bit better in extra stuff, is that they have grown complacent. They just kind of are lax, and that's why they haven't been as weird, wary of potential Sith or even just the Trade Federation doing their stuff, which was one of the reasons why the laxity in the Jedi Order and then the corruption within the Republic is supposed to be the reason the Trade Federation split off to begin with, because they try to humanize it more in other mediums. But it's after all of that goes down, Anakin murdering young children to show he's evil now. He's an evil boy. And he goes and just eliminates all the leadership left. That's wait, we were following. It's okay. And Palpatine swindles the entire galaxy. It's now Obi-Wan and Padme and Anakin all together on Mustafar.
Right. So I just witnessed a security hologram of him murdering younglings, and then he goes to Mustafar. I don't remember what tipped him off that he was hanging out there. Maybe he just used the Force. And Padme, and then, okay, this is the most out of character moment in the whole movie. So Padme comes up and says, "What the F, man? You just killed a bunch of kids." And then he chokes her. The entire reason he's doing this is to keep her alive. What is going on? He starts trying to kill her, and then Obi-Wan's like, "You shouldn't have done that, bro." And he's not then they start fighting. And I'll give it credit, this is the most emotionally charged moment in the whole prequels. In any of the prequels. The problem is, how long does the fight last? At least 15 minutes. And it gets to the point where it's just over the top and ridiculous, and they could have accomplished what they needed to accomplish in the scene in 5 minutes. But anyway, so that whole thing happens, and it takes a significant chunk of the runtime. And the end result is Obi-Wan wins. He has the high ground, and he chops off what's left of Anakin's arms, and then he catches fire, somehow survives. There's an interesting fan theory. I think it probably has some merit, but again, it's one of those things. Since we're not shown it, or it's not hinted at in the movie, there is no setup. Except the existence of the ability to bring people back from the dead, possibly. I think it's possible that this is what happens. So Anakin's dying, and probably for all intents and purposes should be dead. But Padme is alive and healthy. She gives birth to twins, and then she dies because she's sad. Anakin should be dead and somehow alive, so the theory is that Palpatine might have done what he said that he could do, give life to other people. So he could have, what some people think he might have done is taken Padme's life force and given it to Anakin.
You know what? If they show us that on screen, it makes that movie better.
It does.
It makes that ending so much better.
It's a twist, and it's a twist. It's kind of set up and foreshadowed, and it is something that would make sense. Like, oh, geez, that makes sense. He totally could have done that, and that. Oh yeah, I do have this thing, but it's a corruption of it's what a Sith version of that power should look like, because like the idea of being able to create life, that doesn't sound very Sithly to me. Does it sound Sithly to you?
Right. No, it makes it much more sense for it to be kind of like a lich, where you're stealing life to prolong yours or to give some back. And it fits so nicely with it being a Sith Lord, and it just makes everything Darth Vader do is a lie. It's like, well, in your anger, you killed her. And he could still tell her that.
Someone missed you. He's been crying for you.
Great. That's what I need. But yeah, I think that would make a lot of sense. And then we have the most horrible delivery of James Earl Jones's career, the no scene. And then they just set up everything for the sequel. I mean, for the original trilogy, basically. That's the end of the movie.
There you go.
It basically sets it up in a really weird way, because they've already started work on the Death Star, and it takes 20 years to build, and then in between A New Hope and Return of the Jedi, it takes 3 years to get a functioning Death Star again. So that's kind of weird, and it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. And I don't think that having a Death Star again really makes a lot of sense. And then going back to the sequels, having a third Death Star makes no sense. And then having Death Star Destroyers makes even less sense than that. That's what he's been doing this whole time. Well, why not just do that in A New Hope then, Palpatine? Is that why waste time making Death Star if you just make a bunch of Star Destroyers that have the Death Star on it?
Yeah, right. Just make the Final Order, and Palpatine is everyone's dad now.
And it's kind of hinted that he might have actually been Anakin's father, quote unquote. Not really, but he might have manipulated the midichlorians in his body to create life. So that during the opera scene where that thing is happening, there's some sort of weird swirling mass inside of the round object. Some people think that's supposed to be a sperm and an egg.
I think we're giving George too much credit.
We might be. But he also might not have been the one responsible for that. So I don't know. Louis, get out. He can't be in here anymore. He's jumping in the boxes.
Chad, I think that they just wanted Anakin to feel like Jesus.
No, and I'm sorry about that. Louis, he's trying to jump in boxes and tear them up, and we have to send them out. So he can't do that.
You're good. My cats do the same kind of shit, so...
Yeah, I think they really just wanted Space Jesus.
Yep.
And then to flip that on its head. So that basically summarizes the plot of these movies. There's plenty more to discuss, though.
Yeah.
So I think we should probably start with the things about it that we liked. What did you like about the movies?
Oh yeah, chat did freeze, by the way.
Oh, hold on. Let me just. Yeah, it froze on the. It didn't freeze on my side. It froze on the screen. So it didn't work. So we're gonna go to starting soon. Okay, there we go.
So, what I liked. I'm just gonna say writing wise because I've already hit on like the cinematography and music and stuff. I still did like Obi-Wan and Anakin's final fight.
Mm-hmm.
I thought there was emotional impact there. I did like that. I liked Palpatine and Yoda's fight as well. I like how that was written. They can have their ideology clash, if you will. And like that's the bulk of it. It's just everything else is just so memeable. I like how it's
Right.
memeable.
It's not.
But-
It's like good in a B movie sort of way, but these are not B movies.
Yeah, it's like when I'm looking at it critically, I find it harder to find what I did like about it. I liked a lot of the lightsaber duels, and the fights, war scenes. But that's from like a caveman brain of like that's the same reason why some of the Transformer movies is cool.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
It's.
I like
Transformers have better CGI than these movies do. So I mean, like.
Yeah. It's like I like seeing shit blow up, I guess. So that makes my caveman brain happy.
Yeah, so I think some things that I like, it kind of provides a little bit of depth to the Star Wars universe, sometimes in ways that aren't so good. But I mean, the existence of the prequels, like, I mean, you get to see the Jedi in their prime, not that they really do anything, but the score is excellent. Duel of the Fates is like one of the all-time best pieces of movie music ever. I mean, even though the fight was just, I mean, it was well choreographed, but it wasn't like meaningful or impactful. The CGI was good for its time. It has not aged very well because all of the lighting is exactly the same and everywhere except for Mustafar. So, like, it doesn't look very good now, but it looked good when it came out. And the action scenes are well choreographed too, pretty much across the board. And it Revenge of the Sith feels like it does a much better job of like creation of a villain than the other two do. So it's better in that respect. Ewan McGregor's good, even though his character is boring. I mean, he's a charismatic, likable actor. Amazingly, Samuel L. Jackson turns in 3 of the most flat performances of his entire career. Like, I mean, no charisma there at all. Like, I don't know why they gave him such a boring character. And before you say, like, oh, Mace Windu in this is good, Mace Windu in that is good. He's just not good in the prequel trilogy, which is where they needed him. They don't have a guy the caliber of Samuel L. Jackson voicing him in any of the other forms of media he's in. They should have made the best of the situation and made him into this, you know, the bordering on gray Jedi that is in that's in the other media, and we don't get that. But that's beside the point because I'm talking about stuff I like. Palpatine is usually pretty good. The stuff they were trying to do, I think, was ambitious and it wasn't all bad. Like the fact that they were trying to like create this sort of like weird political thing where Palpatine continually coalesces more power. That was interesting. And when Palpatine finally becomes the Emperor, he's like, it's just Ian McDiarmid in his absolute best form, because it's just the schlocky, over-the-top corn fest that you want to see from him, because when he plays that character, he's like one of the best characters in the entire Star Wars saga, if not the best. He's incredible when he acts like this just absolutely evil douchebag. It's hammy and it's fun, and he does a great job when he's doing that. So.
Right. And maybe I'm being too kind on the actors, but I do think a lot of the acting issues in the trilogy is from a direction standpoint.
Oh, almost certainly. Like, how can you have that much talent and then it doesn't amount to anything? So, I honestly don't know how. Anyway, like, so what are some things you didn't like? Because I've got a really, really long list of things, and it will take me a while to get through them.
All of Anakin and Padme's relationship. The Jar Jar Binks. All of the traveling in episode 1. What led to the Geonosis fighting pit on episode 2.
Mm-hmm.
I think those are my big gripes. I won't go too deep into it, but...
Well, I hope you're ready, because I've got a lot.
Bring it on.
So, I'm going to start with the thing that is the most crucial failing of the plot, and it's something you touched on already just a second ago. Because it is it is the hinge upon which the door of the trilogy of the Star Wars saga for the first 6 movies swings. The relationship between Anakin and Padme is laughable. It's so important because it's supposed to be the thing that flips him to the dark side. Because although we were told in the original trilogy he was seduced, in Revenge of the Sith it's established that he wasn't seduced, he was tricked. The thing that got him to be a Jedi is the fact that he wanted to save Padme. And then he said, I need to save her, and I'm willing to do bad things to do it. So the whole thing is predicated on the relationship between the two of them being believable. And it's just not believable at all. They have nothing in common whatsoever. They don't have a similar childhood, except I guess they're pretty much orphans. We don't see Padme's parents at any point during the trilogy. They don't have similar trauma. Anakin was a slave growing up, and she was a princess / queen / senator. Anakin was raised away from any family, any friends, at an age like most younglings are taken in at like the age of like 2, or even maybe infants, and he's taken in at the age of 8 or 9. So he's lost. So he understands everything that he's lost. So all of this stuff, they don't have anything in common. And then throw into the mix that Anakin doesn't have anything going for him besides his looks. He is selfish. He is whiny. He's angry, incredibly arrogant. He is filled with hatred and general just a cruddy attitude towards authority. And by the way, she is an authority figure. And he basically suggests during one of their love moments that he thinks they should get rid of the established Senate, of which she is a part, and put something where somebody's made to do whatever they want, a fascist government in its place. Oh, by the way, you're talking to an elected official who has a vested interest in seeing that that establishment stays in place. And you're trying to convince her why that is a bad idea, while simultaneously trying to get into her pants. Not a good move. And I mean, that the relationship has nothing. They have no chemistry on set. And the reason why it's so important to just beat this into the ground is because it's so crucial to the story. Not only is it the thing that drives Anakin to be the villain in the end, it's what makes him, or I should say, it is the creating force behind the protagonists of the next movie. Like, it's so crucial that we care about their relationship, and we don't get that.
I'll repeat what I said in chat to people, but I think that their relationship as it's written now would have been better to have had just Anakin have a one night stand with her, and like just Padme got knocked up, and then he just cares about the kids, because if she dies in childbirth, the kids might die, and like that's his motivation. But just because of everything you said, like he doesn't have anything going for him. He's selfish. He's whiny. She is a part of something that he is against and doesn't like. It's just like nothing connects them. Nothing at all. So yeah, he does have good looks. So in my brain, I'm like, okay, well then maybe they hooked up or something like that. Or as chat will hate,
at least.
As chat will hate me for saying they had a love moment, chat. But yeah, that would have made more sense with how they are written, how their characters are written. But instead, we have this really weird, awkward relationship, marriage.
Yeah, and the marriage doesn't feel earned because you don't even see them like dating beforehand. Like, I think it would be better if they just didn't get married, but we can't have that in the Star Wars movie. Like, they have to get married, otherwise it's like a love child, and we don't want to be promoting premarital sex, but it's okay if we promote the unadulterated murder of 5-year-olds. So, can't be having that premarital sex, though. Oh, man. So that's like the key problem with the movie. The movies. It's so fundamental to it. If that doesn't happen, then I think the movies are 10 times better, because they don't have something that is fundamental to them ruining them. It's dumb. The plot is incredibly convoluted in the first two movies. The third movie, less so. Significantly less so. But in the first movie and the second movie, there's so much weird, slithering around to make sense of something that is inherently nonsensical. Here, let me read to you a few plot points of observations that either I or somebody else made that I think are valid. Palpatine uses the Trade Federation to create a vote of no confidence in Chancellor Valorum so that he can be elected as the next Chancellor. Why? Why doesn't he do something else? And also, is Chancellor Valorum so incompetent that a single thing that is really not really his business, because I think that the Naboo are thinking about leaving the Republic anyway? Why is this the thing that pushes him over the edge? The Jedi are for some reason sent to settle a trade dispute, and the CIS basically try to kill them. That would be a horrible offense, given the fact that, as far as these Jedi know, they're just negotiators. And there's no reason for them to know that they're Jedi other than the fact that they're hooded and cloaked figures, except almost everybody in this trilogy, in these movies, is hooded and cloaked. So, why would that be the thing that sends them over the edge? And why is sending Jedi to these negotiations such a bad thing that you decide to kill them on spot? These are supposed to be traitors. Why do they have a standing army at all? Why do they have a standing army of battle droids? And what exactly are they trying to do? Why are they trying to cripple a planet by not trading with them? And thus decreasing their potential trade revenue. What exactly is Palpatine offering them that would lead them to such a potentially devastating loss of income? Because Naboo is, from what I can tell, a pretty well-off planet. Also, the Naboo are blockaded for a day, and they're dying, or so they say, because we don't actually see anything happen. But the planet's fine. There's rivers and water and
Nope, can't grow crops here. Let me tell you, no food here.
What do they need so badly from the Republic or the Trade Federation or whatever that suddenly they will die after a day of not getting trade? There's no rioting. We don't see any people in freaking Naboo except for politicians and a few people who work at an airport.
We don't see any of like the civilians. It just, and you're right, it's a whole planet. On a whole planet, they don't have enough resources to survive some sort of blockade for months.
There's always a bigger fish. This is established.
The economy.
The economy will collapse.
God, it just, yeah, it's written on a bunch of things. The whole trilogy is written on see, not tell, and founded on don't worry about it logic.
Yeah, don't worry about it. Don't worry.
Just accept what I'm telling you as reality, and you'll have a much better time.
Why did they go back to Naboo? I guess to drop off Padme, but why'd they leave Naboo in the first place if they just had to take her back? Like, to escape from the whatever, the Trade Federation by running through a blockade? Running through a blockade, something that is supposed to stop you from leaving? That seems like a really bad idea. During the lead up to the pod race, what exactly is Qui-Gon even wagering? The boy's freedom and the hyperdrive, according to Wikipedia. He doesn't have a hyperdrive to wager, and he doesn't have the boy's freedom because the boy doesn't belong to him. What is he giving Watto at all to convince him this is a good wager? Against what collateral? You have nothing of value to offer him. He doesn't accept Republic credits, so you can't buy it off him. You aren't offering your own services. You're offering a lifetime of servitude for some kid you just met. And he's already got that. He could have just said, mind tricked him into cooperating, and before anyone says, that's not the Jedi way, he literally did that to Watto a few minutes before the wager to get him to accept a currency that is worthless to him because they don't accept credits on Tatooine because it's not under Republic jurisdiction. It's garbage.
It's like he can't, he doesn't even work either. It's like Watto's like, I don't fucking fall for your Jedi mind tricks.
Because he's not weak-minded, he's not an idiot.
Yeah.
He's a shrewd businessman, or at least so we would be led to believe. The Jedi have no idea what the Federation wants, and I'm not so certain I know what they want myself. But both Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan believe that the Federation is attempting to hold Naboo hostage based upon no evidence whatsoever that they have witnessed. The only way they could know these things is if they had a copy of the script that they brought with them to Naboo. Because they didn't witness any of the conversations that Palpatine was having with Viceroy Gunray. They're just assuming. All this stuff is assuming. So that's just from the first movie, and I don't think I need to elaborate any further because the first movie was like the worst of them in terms of plot contrivances and plot holes and inconsistencies.
Yeah, it's the same issue that Game of Thrones runs into. It's like characters have knowledge they shouldn't have, and the characters suddenly lost brain cells that they should have.
Right.
Which, happy 1 year since the end of Game of Thrones.
Oh. Made me sad. So, point 2. The characters are devoid of any soul whatsoever that is not explicitly stated on screen. When I say stated, I mean they say things instead of just, letting it be evident in their actions. No character has any unique descriptors or motivations. This is something they do in the Plinkett review, but I'm going to give you characters from the original trilogy and characters from the prequels. And without describing their appearance, their clothing, their profession or role in the story, tell me what this character is like based upon what you know. So we'll start with Luke Skywalker.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm asking you. Sorry, I should have made that clear. So like, tell me what you could just without describing his appearance or his job. Tell me about Luke.
Are you? I mean, are you incorporating Jedi in a job or?
Yes. What motivates him? What makes him who he is?
Luke is seeking answers. His motivation is he wants to know what happened to his father, and he wants to chase after his friends, really, because his friends were all going off, got the piloting. Like, Luke always seems to be aiming towards joining the rebellion, like in a sense of he wants to fight for his admittedly kind of naive, but it's okay. And like beliefs, like simplistic, like good guy beliefs, and he wants to find out what happened to his dad, like what is the truth, because his whole life he's been told don't worry about it. So like those two things, and then after he finds out a bit more information, he does have this righteousness to himself of like he has purpose. He feels like his purpose is to bring balance back. So for me, that's kind of like character descriptions of him.
Right. That's pretty in depth. Pretty good. Qui-Gon Jinn. Do the same with him.
Ah, God. See, now I'm trying to separate movie and non-movie stuff. What do we know about Qui-Gon in episode 1 explicitly? He is kind of rogue. Like he kind of goes against the normal code of things for Jedi. He's not always a follow by the toe the line kind of rules guy. And he has interests in a child that may have strong force power. He feels like the kind of character that he like really looks out for, like the outcast kind of person, because it seems like he's kind of the outcast kind of person. And he doesn't follow the rules explicitly, but like I don't really know what he wants overall. Like I don't know what his goal is or his purpose. I just know where he's like come from. I don't know where he's going. And I mean, I guess it's just because he's written like he's going to die. He's written like they're not going to have to write anything else for him after this episode.
Yeah. So that was better than I would have done. But I think it's still pretty obvious that you don't really know exactly what his motivation is. Because there isn't one. At least not on screen. How about Han Solo?
Oh God, Han is a riot of things. Han is a selfish person who, on the surface, he's selfish. He looks out for himself, but underneath, he is entirely altruistic. And he doesn't like to show that because it seems like a weakness, especially in his profession. But from his helping free Chewbacca to begin with, and then how he constantly helps people out without a direct benefit for him or a reasonable chance of getting his reward for that. He's also very snarky and witty. He uses humor to deflect from emotion. He's just somebody that's seen the world. But I mean, obviously, yeah, I could go on, but Han has a lot of depth to him, and he's built like that for a reason, because you want people to go from like being upset with him to loving him in the span of like 30 minutes.
Okay, here's another one. Padme. Go.
Fucking, oh God, Padme.
I knew this was going to be one that was going to be hard. It's probably worse than
Padme. Padme is just driven by duty the entire time. The entire series. It's like duty and honor. And like, I need to hold up my position. I need to toe the line, follow the rules, and fix things from inside. It's like she's like the most lawful good person until she needs to change for the script, basically. But
Uh-huh.
like her personality always comes across as like, I'm gonna fix things, but I'm gonna fix it the right way with political reform by
Mm-hmm.
following the rules. And like that's it. That's her character archetype, is follow the rules, Andy. And like, except for whenever I need to break them, because now I'm a little selfish because I like this Anakin guy. Why? I don't know. He made some really bad slam poetry at me and killed a bunch of people. But I kind of think that's hot. So
So that's a pretty good summary, but it's still pretty obvious that like her motivation is pretty much non-existent.
it's one dimensional. Like,
Yes, there's no depth to it at all. We don't know why she feels that way, just that she feels that way. And even then, like, I mean, it's just there's so many like instances where she just does things, especially in the first movie. Like she just does things. Like go along with these Jedi, I guess. Like it's not really their job to protect you, except it's like the Jedi way, I guess. But it's not something they actually signed up for. They signed up to be negotiators.
yeah.
Jeez. It's so bad, so bad. So here's some more like that. That's just something that that they did on the Plinkett reviews of this. They did a lot worse than you, so congrats on actually being able to put something together. But it's still like pretty bad, obviously, because the two characters from the original trilogy are so much more well defined, and you get all that just based on the first movie. You can tell that. You can tell that Han is roguish and a maverick, and he does things his own way, and he kind of needs a little bit of redemption and a change in his character, because like in the original he shot Greedo first. I mean, I know that George came behind and tweaked that, but you know, it's pretty well established that he's the kind of person who would do something like that. And he, you know, he's at a point in his life where he's just like, I don't freaking care about anything or anybody, because I don't know anybody worth my time except for Chewbacca. That's it. And that's his motivation. What's Qui-Gon? I mean, I guess he's like follows the Force, and he decided that he needs to help Anakin, and he kind of helps the downtrodden, except that he basically tries to fix a game of dice in his favor, and he tries to mind trick people left and right for the greater good, but he doesn't. He like comes up with these dumb convoluted plots constantly. Like the wager scene was one of the weirdest things I've ever witnessed. It doesn't make any sense at all. Here's some more. Basically what I said was no character has any unique descriptors or motivations except Jar Jar, which is pretty bad. Qui-Gon brings nothing interesting to the table at all. They could have saved money by not bringing on Liam Neeson, a well-respected and famous actor, to play an emotionless, morally dubious dum-dum like Qui-Gon, because Qui-Gon's a moron throughout the entire movie. Makes a bunch of terrible decisions, including the single worst decision in Star Wars history. The decision to take Anakin on as a Padawan. Because if he decided not to do that, there's no Star Wars.
Yeah,
I mean, I guess we should be thankful to him in some respect because of that, but like, it was, in terms of like the galaxy's health and well-being, it was the single dumbest thing that anybody could have done. Because everybody was telling him you shouldn't do it. Although Ewan McGregor does his best, Obi-Wan is largely as boring as Qui-Gon. He just complains a lot. And he's sarcastic, and he doesn't really seem to have any motivation himself. He's against bringing on Anakin, and he's only doing it out of some duty because he's more straight-laced than Obi-Wan. And Obi-Wan, I mean, he's more straight-laced than Qui-Gon. Which means they have two characters that are straight-laced and whose motivation is only do what I'm supposed to do and don't question authority. I mean, they have two characters who have the exact same motivation in the same movie. Padme is nothing. She's a nothing character in the first movie, at least, and I don't think she develops significantly in the second or third movie.
No,
Anakin is a
does not change.
whiny little baby, and he doesn't do anything in the first movie at all. His only, the only thing, redeeming, or I should say, like, that makes him interesting is that he's a kid, but I honestly think that it would have been better if he had not been a kid and he had been a teenager. And I'll talk about that if I have time later on.
Mm-hmm.
Mace Windu is a brick wall, and Samuel L. Jackson, a greatly talented actor, was horrifically miscast. Because Mace Windu is just, he doesn't do anything. He just tells people don't do stuff the entire movie. Mace Windu, or I should say Samuel L. Jackson, in the right performance, is like this electric, angry, violent force of nature. He's like Jules in Pulp Fiction is like scary. And he's like, he's this weird Bible quoting, gun toting mother effer who will shoot you dead if he doesn't like you, even on accident. If he'll like accidentally shoot you in the head when they're arguing about like, I think burgers or something in the car. And like, it's just, that's the kind of thing that you need Samuel L. Jackson for. And they brought him in to do like what? Like just tell people, hey, I think that you suck and you shouldn't be a Jedi Master.
Take a seat, young Skywalker. Like, yeah. They really did have like a good cast members that just were criminally underused.
Oh yes.
Chris Lee's another one.
Christopher Lee is as Saruman, he is incredible. And he actually does a good job with what he's given in Star Wars, but he's not given anything. So no. I mean, it's just pointless and worthless. Number 3, the dialogue is straight garbage. Here's just a few quotes, and it is by no means an exhaustive list, but here's a few of them. This one is baffling to me because I don't even know what it means. They should be dead by now. Destroy what's left of them. I don't
keep
like sand.
Shooting.
What?
Just keep shooting the dead bodies until they're only atoms.
Yes. I don't like sand. It's coarse, it's rough, irritating, and it gets everywhere. They're animals, and I slaughter them like animals. I hate them!
Not just the men, but the women.
And the children, too.
This is why it's memed, because his dialogue is so fucking bad. Oh god, do you have more of them?
I just witnessed a security hologram of him murdering younglings. You underestimate my power! And... No! Oh my gosh. Oh, and here's a bonus one, if I can find it. This is in the first movie, and it's a really, really bad line of dialogue that just explains just how freaking boring the plot in this movie is. Will you defer your motion to allow a commission to explore the validity of your accusations? That's an actual line that somebody said in this movie.
When does that even happen? Is that in the first movie?
Yes. It's like Chancellor Valorum is like, I guess, questioning maybe Padme or something about like, hey, you suck. You should. I vote no confidence in you, I guess. And then he says with a straight face, will you defer your motion to allow a commission to explore the validity of your accusations? Like, it's so bad.
God, it's just... The tone of all these movies is so weird. I don't know if I'm watching a political drama, if I'm watching a space opera, or a fucking daytime soap opera.
And that kind of goes along with the next point. It's not my last point, but it's getting there. the movie seems oddly determined to demystify Star Wars. I don't know if you feel the same way, but I really feel like it does.
Yeah, it like dumbs the Jedi down. We get like a weird biological reason for the Force. I can see that.
Yeah. So, like, something that is mentioned, I think, in the review of the Revenge of the Sith and the third prequel Plinkett thing, is like everyone on Tatooine, people dress the way they do because it's hot and it would make sense for them to dress a certain way. But it's not necessarily that Ben is dressed like a Jedi. In fact, it would be kind of stupid for him to dress like a Jedi because people would know who he was. It seems more likely that he's just dressing like everybody else. But then the prequels, everybody dresses like that if they're a Jedi. So it kind of like retcons something that is kind of unspoken about the way that people behave. So it just makes it, that's just the way Jedi dress now, I guess. I mean, it just doesn't feel normal. There's a line in Return of the Jedi where the Emperor says that a lightsaber is a Jedi weapon, which implies that it's not a Sith weapon. The reason that Vader uses a red lightsaber is because he's a fallen Jedi, not because Sith have red lightsabers. At least in the context of those movies, that's what it seems to be implying. It's not necessarily so much of an in-universe canon thing. It's more something to communicate something visually, shorthand. Red is bad and blue is good. Same with green. So it makes sense that a fallen Jedi would use a red lightsaber if he was going to use a lightsaber. But the fact that all Sith use lightsabers too just kind of throws that in the trash, and they all use red lightsabers. So Palpatine doesn't use a lightsaber in Jedi. He uses lightning. And it's not because that's just a Sith power, at least that doesn't seem to be what it's implying. It's implying that he does it because he's a bad person. He likes torturing people, because he could easily kill Luke with no trouble if he just took the lightsaber that Vader had and just ran it through. Instead, he wants to torment him, and that's what pushes Vader over the edge. He wants to torment him for refusing his offer to join him and become a Sith as well. But in prequels, all Sith just use lightning. It's just something they do now. I mean, it's not something that specific to Palpatine, because we see Dooku do it as well. Even if it's not something that would be particularly advantageous to him, he just does it because it's just something that they do. So yeah, everybody has a lightsaber, even if it's not something that would work well for them. I think George even went on the record as saying like the lightsaber isn't something that is tied up in the Force. It's just something that Jedi do because they're knights, right? Knights use swords.
Mm-hmm.
So it follows that a Jedi would use a sword, but it needs to be futuristic-y, so they make them laser swords. But like they don't use guns ever. In fact, they say it's stupid that like everybody else uses guns. It's uncivilized, even to their detriment, because there's times when using a gun literally saves their life when using a lightsaber would not. I.e., when Grievous is fighting Obi-Wan and Obi-Wan shoots him in the chest because he can't hit him with his lightsaber. He doesn't have his lightsaber nearby. And he thinks that it's a garbage weapon because it's not a lightsaber, and that's the reason why. So I think it demystifies it. Instead of making all these things kind of like cool, esoteric things that make Star Wars interesting, it's more just like, oh yeah, everybody has lightsabers because there's Jedi everywhere now. It's not like they would ever use weapons other than lightsabers, like laser spears or something. They just all use lightsabers. Of course they do. Everybody dresses that way. Everyone dresses the way that Obi-Wan did because it's just the way Jedi dress. Even though, like, I don't think in the first two movies Luke dressed that way at all, except when he was like hanging out on Tatooine because it's the clothing he wore. Like in Jedi, he's wearing dark black clothing the whole time. It's kind of symbolized a change in him because he's gone not necessarily to the dark side, but he's changed to a more less naive person. So he's changed his getup a little bit. Like, it's just like all the stuff that you think you know about Star Wars that's just like, that's the way it is because it makes sense. And nothing is more like worse than this to me than I think, other than the midichlorians, of course, the chosen one narrative that they decided to adopt.
Yeah, I just it's funny because I came into tonight expecting there to be a decent amount, right? Mm-hmm. But the more we talk about it, like the more there is to unpack about these movies that I didn't even think about.
Right.
And it just, yeah, it's I think it gets this way because people are so invested into this saga. I could, it's not like there's any especially like standalone movies that would get this. I mean, can you imagine someone trying like doing a deep dive breakdown to like Transformers?
I have seen
it. They like it exists, but it's just like it doesn't hold the same weight as like people going into like Lord of the Rings or Star Wars, where like these are monumental, but like there's a lot to unpack with it still. I'm not, this is an aside and this is totally just a personal opinion. I'm not as big into chosen ones just from a writing perspective. I think it's fine in Star Wars. It's just me being like opinionated, I guess.
Well, the problem with the chosen one narrative is that its benefit is also its weakness. It makes it so that it's easy for them to have a conflict.
Daddy,
established. Thanks, Prodigy, for subscribing to us ranting for 3 hours almost.
Yeah, hope you're enjoying.
But the thing about it is that it makes it easy to establish conflict because there's a reason for the villain to have a vested interest in them. In this case, Palpatine has a vested interest in Anakin because he's the chosen one. He wants to use him for his own nefarious reasons. But it's also a storytelling weakness because it makes it so that they have an established, they don't have to actually build towards anything because it's built into the narrative itself. There's a chosen one that was prophesied or whatever. And it's also not interesting because it's literally the same story that people have been telling since Jesus. So it's not like even like, it's literally just a Christ narrative without any of the nuance that comes from like building interesting characters around that. The interesting thing they do with it is that they decide to make him a bad chosen one, but
and then he gets redeemed anyways.
Yeah,
because they already like.
I don't like that. I think that's one of the worst things about Jedi, and the prequels by proxy because they make him redeemable by just doing what he should have done in the first place. So
yeah.
The thing about what were you gonna say?
I was just gonna. This is outside of the movies, but did you ever see the Clone Wars episode where they went in an entirely different direction with the Chosen One stuff?
No, you can go ahead.
They went. I'll be brief. They went very physical because he was supposed to bring balance to the Force, right?
Mm-hmm.
He found, I forget if it's a planet or if it was like a space station. Like he found this place on like the outskirt of space where he found like basically the god of the Force, if you will, and the god's two children, one which represent the light side and one which represent the dark side, and only this like godlike figure that was chosen could keep them in check and keep them in balance. And Anakin was supposed to take over for him because he was going to pass on or what have you. And Anakin was supposed to stay there and do that. But Anakin was like, in the series, is too selfish to do that. And he just leaves because he's like, I got my own life to deal with. I don't want to do this. But it's such a weird that was like an odd writing choice. I'm like, I don't know which one of those I like better because it just felt like a total flip on it for the reasoning. It became so much more physical and tangible rather than like metaphoric.
The thing that's so weird to me about the usage of a chosen one is that Vader's fall in the original trilogy wasn't like him doing he was prophesied to do good things and then he did bad things. It's like he was he was a Jedi, a strong Jedi, but the series doesn't revolve around him and his redemption. Yeah. He's a tough guy. He's big and buff and he's burly and he do what he want. But he's not like the central focal point of the whole series. So the decision to, instead of making him a chosen one, or I should say the decision to make him like a chosen one instead of just being a strong Jedi that fell, makes the whole series about him. And it's so obvious that it's like a cash grab because Vader is everyone's favorite character from the trilogy. So they decided, okay, well, let's just put more Vader in here and make Anakin the character that the entire series is built around. And that's a problem because it's so obvious looking back at the sequels. Thank you, Acorns, for the raid. I am not PsycheSiren. I am Teeth Whitener, and I have Gilgamesh King 07 with me, and we're ranting about the Star Wars prequels for 3 hours plus. So thank you for showing up. I'm Teeth Whitener, and I'm just, like I said, we're talking about the prequels. Normally this would be PsycheSiren, but on Tuesdays, I take over for her. I'm her husband, and we usually talk about something, or I play a video game instead of her, because she can have a night off. So that's what we're doing. So basically, the problem with it is that it's a series, or I should say, is that it takes something that is not inherently about Vader and makes everything about him. And it makes it so obvious that since we're doing a prequel, and it's probably going to result, like, there's going to be some mention of Anakin in it for sure. It's just another series about somebody that we care about already to make more money. Because the prequels made a lot of money. I mean, I know they didn't make as much money as they could have because they weren't very good, but the first one made over $1 billion, and it was the second highest grossing film of all time at the time of its release. And everything, and all the merchandising, like they made so much merchandise, characters to be merchandised, like Watto and
Jar Jar Binks.
Jar Jar.
What's that big to do now?
Yeah, so it's just like it's so irritating to me that's the reason why the prequels exist. It's a cash grab, really. At a fundamental level, it exists to make money, and I know that's what movies are about. But like, it's not doing anything interesting with something we already know. And what's worse, it doesn't do anything interesting with what we already know, and the characters aren't interesting. We don't learn, or I should say, Obi-Wan is a less interesting character in the prequels, in spite of a good actor, than he is in the sequels. And I guess their sequels, which are really the original trilogy. But yeah, I guess what really all of this leads up to is just something that bugs me a lot. So I don't know if you've been paying attention to Reddit lately, but there's like this weird movement to make the prequels into something they're just misunderstood literature. People don't get them because there's this weird political plot and stuff, and it's just goes over a lot of people's heads. And I think that's kind of the point. It goes over a lot of people's heads because it's a movie written for children, and they're talking about trade blockades, and like they have all this dark stuff that goes on in them, but they have characters like Jar Jar. Yeah. So like, who are these movies for? They're for kids, but they talk about politics in them, but they have things like sexual assault, implied sexual assault with Shmi, murder, genocide, implied sexual relations, just all this stuff that is decidedly not PG and like makes us not for kids at all. But then we have characters like Jar Jar that are supposed to be like explicitly for children for comic relief.
Right.
It's just so stupid.
It just has like no consistent tone across the three movies, and it doesn't feel like it knows what it wants to be. It's the same thing with almost everything we've complained about on all of our rants. There's like an identity crisis. Just never, these things like bad movies and bad TV shows and stuff like that, they just lose their identity, or they never have one to begin with.
Yeah.
It's just, yeah. Ugh. It just makes you, as the consumer of the medium, just like very confused, and everything just kind of catches you off guard.
It's really bizarre because like it makes you wonder what the purpose of the prequel's existence is, because we learn some stuff about the universe, but we don't learn anything about the characters that are in the prequels, because presumably that's what the prequel's existence was supposed to be, to shed some light on the characters of the prequels. But we don't learn anything about them from in the prequels themselves. We learn about it from, all this extraneous stuff that makes the prequels better by retrospect. That's not what the prequels should have done that from the beginning, and then all this extra stuff is it tells different stories, or it adds depth to an already fairly deep painting. It's like a viewer's guide to a good thing that already exists, instead of explaining to us what they're trying to do. I mean, it's just, you shouldn't have to consume that stuff to make sense of something. If I want to watch the Clone Wars, I will, and I probably will, but there's going to be people out there who are not going to be able to, or don't want to, because they think it's kiddie, since it's a cartoon, and they're going to leave the prequels and never come back to them and be fundamentally confused to their existence. But the thing that bothers me so much about them is that nowadays, and this is really the main reason why I even decided to have this rant, the prequels are, to me, something that has become a cultural discussion point, that since the sequels were bad, that the prequels are now somehow made better by that. And that's just not true.
Yeah, it just, there's a weird give and take between like the people that actually have, like you said, kind of like it's mistaken literature, or like the almost like cult classic mentality, but on such a bigger scale. There's like a stark difference between, or well, no, it's not stark, it's muddled almost, between them and the shit posters.
Right.
Because like r/prequel memes, there are some people that think the prequels were genuinely just such good movies. They're not good movies. But there's other people on there that they're just there to meme on it. Like, and that's why that's a great example of a movie that's bad. When you can make memes on almost every single piece of dialogue in the movie,
because it's dumb.
It's because it's bad. It's the same reason The Room is so memeable, because it's bad.
Exactly. And the thing is, I understand you want to redeem your childhood and believe that what you watched as a kid wasn't stupid or pointless. That's why you see a lot of like these revivals of childhood TV shows, and some of them are good, some of them aren't, because people are trying to cash in on nostalgia. And I don't think that Disney has any part in this, because I don't think that they're trying to push a narrative that the prequels were actually secretly good. But there's a certain part of the people who watched the prequels that want to believe that. They didn't just waste their time watching a stupid dumb kids movie that isn't even really for kids. And I mean, I want to believe that about the prequels, because I watched them all when I was a kid, and I liked them at the time. But, you know, even then, I thought that the whole idea of an assassin sending another assassin to not even actually directly kill the person they're sent to kill, I thought that was stupid. And it didn't make sense to me then, and it still doesn't make sense to me now. Why didn't Jango Fett just do it himself? I mean, it doesn't make any sense.
Right.
Especially if the point was to try to send them to Kamino to learn about the clones. Like, wouldn't it have been easy? Like, what if the assassin just disappeared and he didn't get a chance to kill her so that they could lead her back to Kamino, lead Obi-Wan back to Kamino to find the clone army and then use it to fight against the droids? This is something else. Before a real quick touch point before I kind of close this out. Like, okay, there's no tension at all between any of the fighting. Any tension that you see between characters, like, okay, like, oh, well, some of the clones are well developed in the show, but on screen they just follow orders. They don't have any depth or personality at all. They just blindly follow orders and try and kill people. I mean, that's what they do.
Yeah.
And there's no tension between a fight between robots and a fight between flesh robots. It's just watching two brick walls two glaciers slowly move into place to collide with one another. I mean, it's not even interesting to watch, because the whole point of watching a conflict like that is that it's supposed to be tense. It's not tense. But back to the closing arguments, it's just like, prequel memes, like you said, and this is something that I've observed too, they've gone beyond the point of being ironic crap posters. They've gone to the point where some of them actually legitimately believe the prequels were good. In fact, I'd go so far as to say most of the people who comment on the posts believe that. And it's come out in a weird way lately. I don't know if you've been paying attention. There's like this poll going on.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah, like where they felt the need to, for some reason, to, basically rig a vote to make it so that their dumb Revenge of the Sith movie beats Endgame, which I don't care what you think. Endgame is a better movie with a more satisfying ending than I don't care if you think it's cliche. It's a better ending. It just is, because it's built up. It's a 20-something year build-up between characters that we care about. And in Revenge of the Sith, it's just not. There's not that build-up, and it's pretty obvious that they just mobilized because they wanted to, basically fix the vote. And people can say, "Oh, well, it's just passionate people showing their passion for a movie they care about." It's freaking memeing, and it's manipulating the vote. So people get mad about there being like vote manipulation and there being botting, but they're basically just human bots who are just doing something they're told to do by everybody else. And that's where we are with this prequel meme culture. People have stopped being ironic about it, and they've started legitimately believing that Revenge of the Sith is actually like a really good movie that we just don't get. We didn't get at the time. And believe it or not, the rest of the prequels were that way too.
Yeah. But they're wrong.
But they're wrong. I mean, Revenge of the Sith is definitely the best of the three, but it's got some issues as well, without question. So I don't really have a whole lot else to contribute. What are your final thoughts?
Okay, my signing off in summary. The prequels are great movies to throw on in the background while you do something else. They're super memeable, and they have a special place for that reason. Turn your brain off. Just don't go in expecting anything great literature-wise, writing-wise. But they could have been pretty cool, but because they're Star Wars, their success was much higher than if they wouldn't have been. But Also, just an aside, none of the actors or actresses deserve the shit they got. It's not their
No.
fault.
And
The end.
that goes for the sequels as well.
Mhm.
Star Wars fans are just toxic. In general.
True.
The fan base is toxic.
I like to think we're productive salt miners.
You need to go to bed.
Why does she whisper so creepily?
I don't know.
Why is she like this?
But yeah, I mean, I agree. It's just if you don't think about it too much and you just watch it for the dumb dialogue and all that stuff, they're fine. And they're not terrible movies, but I didn't even talk about like the boring shots or the like just the people whenever they have conversations, they're almost always walking or looking, or they're sitting down on a couch and there's just a reverse shot to camera over the shoulder thing, no variation in camera angles or anything. It's just really boring. There's no sense of urgency when somebody learns something dangerous or important. I mean, they're not terrible, just absolutely garbage movies. They have high production values in them, but they haven't aged well in terms of the graphic, the CGI, because they rely on it too much. And it's just, I need people to know that even if you think that they are good movies, I don't want to like crap on you as a human being, but they're not very good. And I mean, you'd be better off trying to find defenses of better movies, because the stuff that they try to do in the prequels is ambitious, but it fails pretty miserably most of the time.
Yeah. Consistently missed the mark.
Consistently, yes. And they're funny and fun for the wrong reasons, but they're not like good movies. So anything else you want to say?
Nope. There it is. There are the prequels. Also, I think me and Chatter are making your wife upset.
I think so too. That could be that way sometimes. So I'm gonna do my sign off and then I'll say goodbye after I'm done with that. So just give me 1 second.
You're good.
Alright guys, thank you so much for showing up to this long-winded rant about something that, I mean, I care about, but I also don't care a lot about. I guess I'm just tired of seeing people try to defend these movies when there's not much to defend. They have a lot going against them, and it irritates me, because there's better movies out there to take a stand for. Like, for instance, well, I can't think of anything off the top of my head, but there are other better movies out there that are underrated for you to die on a hill for. Like the Sam Raimi Spider-Man films are really good. And people crap on them because of one bad movie in the trilogy. So, you know, stand up for those and just meme the prequels, because that's what they're there for. But thank you for listening to me rant for 3 hours about this, and I appreciate it. So this has been Teeth Whitener, and we are signing off. Thanks so much. You guys have a good night. Bye.